Good morning, everyone. How are we doing today? Good morning. So I'm going to check the temperature in the room. I'm Nigerian, and we do this thing. We have a call and response thing that we do as Nigerians. And when I say hello, you all say hi. How does that sound? So hello. 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 It's great to see you all this morning. My name is Mamobo Ogoro, social psychologist and founder of GURM, and I'm so pleased to welcome you today to the National Social Enterprise Conference 2024. So we are gathered today to hear a lot of speaking, workshops, and interactive events on all things social enterprise today. And again, I'm so pleased to welcome you all today, especially if you are a leader in the social enterprise sector, if you are a emerging and budding social entrepreneur, or if you are just here to learn about social impact and measuring your social impact also. This is an event for you today. As you saw in the video, we have our emergency exits here. So in the unlikely event of an emergency, please take note of your emergency exits and please walk out calmly if that eventually happens, if that happens. So as we go through today, we will be having a lot of conversations, we'll be having a lot of insights, and we have a lot of open discussion around the social enterprise sector as well. So if you are engaging on social media, if you're online, and if you're engaging, we so recommend you to use the hashtag SoSentIRL if you want to share all the amazing insights and all the experiences that you're having today. And all of you have the lanyard here that you can see here that was happily provided to us by Trias Press. So if you have any sort of merch lanyards that you want to engage, I'd be happy and recommend you to engage with them as well. So to kick off the conference today, I am so privileged to introduce you to Mary Hurley, Secretary General of the Department of Rural and Community Development. Mary has been a huge advocate for the social enterprise sector and is hugely committed to social impact and the sector as well. Welcome, Mary.
Many thanks, Mamobo, and good morning, everybody, on this very chilly morning. It's great to be here in Dublin Castle. And just listening to Mamobo, certainly the day we have ahead, I think, is a day that will warm us up. And it's a day that should be full of energy and activity, looking at the itinerary. This is the 6th National Social Enterprise Conference. And the level of interest is just great here today. And we're also joined by many, many people online. So welcome to everybody online also. It's great to see, I was just looking outside, the spectrum of social enterprise stakeholders that are here today. We're networks, support organisations, public bodies, social funders, financiers, and of course people from the education sector. So great to see you all. I want to thank you all, first of all, for the work that you do and the impact that the work that you do has on communities. It's amazing. The sector sometimes, I think, can be a little bit the unsung heroes, but the work that you do is amazing among our communities. Today, as Mamobo said, is a day where we can reflect on the progress that we've made to date in the social enterprise space. And I think it's a time for us to consider where to next and to think about what more can we do. There's always more that we can do. How more can we push the boundaries? The theme of today's conference is, of course, Trading for Impact. And I'm sure you'll agree this is a very concise description of social enterprise, encompassing as it does the two very important sides. The trading element, that's so important and is part of the DNA of social enterprise, and the impact element that alludes to the really beneficial effect that social enterprise has up and down this country and to the communities and also to our environment. So much is contained in those three words, trading for impact, that we named the 2nd National Social Enterprise Strategy after it. As you know, a primary goal of my department, and you'll see there's a lot of officials from my department here today. I'm joined by Kira here on the stage. But a core objective for us in the department is to set a policy framework that supports the community and voluntary sector and that supports social enterprise. It's to support organisations that tackle disadvantaged social issues and also deliver services. That's the core objective of our strategy. Of course, our Trading for Impact policy works side by side by the other range of policies that we've developed and published across the department. And I often think that the Department in Rural Community Development, it's a very small department, that is true to say, but it's a department that has huge impact across the board. And I was just looking when we were preparing for this conference at the many policy documents that we have produced over the last number of years, and they are quite significant for that small department that we are. This tackling Trading for Impact, it sits side by side with our philanthropy policy, which Ciara also worked on, our volunteering strategy, which will come to an end next year, and which we'll be working on a new one. Our Rural Future, another policy in the department. Again, we're looking to the future on that. That will come to conclusion in 2025. But huge progress across all of these documents. And I think there's a great synergy across all of the policy pieces in the department. And we are a department that's there to support you and to support communities. So that policy framework is really, really important. The Trading for Impact policy, it really does propose greater ambition. And we'll hear a little bit about it from Ciara. It focuses on 5 key objectives: building awareness of social enterprise, growing and sustaining social enterprise, supporting the green transition, which is key and important, national and international engagement, and impact measurement. Ciara will provide us with more in-depth look at the new policy in a few moments. And I suppose just as I'm mentioning Ciara, I'd like to pay tribute to Ciara because she has done stellar work in the community and voluntary sector with her team. Rob Nicholson, you'll probably have known previously, and Richard Gavin were working in this space. They would have been at last year's conference when we got together, and they've moved to different areas in the department, but Ciara and Deirdre Carney have taken up the cudgels, and I know will continue the great work that Rob and Richard did before. So thanks to Rob and Richard. Trading for Impact was developed in partnership with you and the sector. And it's a really good example of the collaborative approach that's required going forward. It's very much your policy. This partnership approach is really critical to our shared success, and I know we'll continue to work together. It's something I've observed. I'm in the department now nearly 3 years. I was just mentioning to my friend here, nearly 3 years in the department, and one of the things that I've seen is the great partnership approach within the department, and I'd really like to see that continue. As an example of working together, this year we commissioned a social enterprise consortium led by Syrian, including the Wheel, the ILDN and Eisen, to work together to deliver a range of social enterprise policy actions on behalf of the department. And I'd like to thank our colleagues from this consortium for all this work, which has gone into organising this conference today, the first policy action being delivered in partnership with you. Back to today's conference. We have a lot on the agenda. Later this morning, we'll see in practice what social enterprise looks like, and we've 3 social enterprises from rural locations: Common Knowledge, Living Woodlands and Cloughjordan Community Farm will give us valuable insights into their ventures. We'll have panel discussions later on this morning, and we'll also have 3 breakout sessions. Our closing address will be provided by Sue Adams from Education for Sustainability. I'd encourage you all today to take part in all of the different sessions and today is an opportunity to meet old friends, but it's definitely another opportunity to meet new friends. So collaborate, engage, and network. That's what I'd say to you today. Social enterprise and the work that you do makes an amazing contribution to this country and to communities. I can assure you the department are there to support you in whatever way we can. We look forward to working with you, and I really look forward to hearing the discussions today and where we can do further things, and if there's further things that we can do or supports we can put in place from the department, we'll be there to do that. So look, thank you to you all, and enjoy the day.
Thank you so much, Mary, for those inspiring words, and it was really great to hear the amount of work and your passion as well for the sector and the contributions that the department has been making. So I'm sure a lot of you have read back to front, word to word, that this National Social Enterprise Policy, have we? Have you read back to front, word to word? Well, if you have not read it back to back, front to front, Ciara Braids, the Principal Officer from the Department of Rural and Community Development, is here to explain to us a bit more deeply the policy itself and how it impacts each and every one of us. Ciara, off to you.
Thank you, Mamoba, and thank you, everybody. Good morning. Hope your feet and hands have defrosted after that trip in. I'm going to give you a quick, I suppose, overview of how we developed the new policy, the kind of challenges that were there, and how we're going to move forward in terms of implementing the policy as well. So, again, thanks very much to Mary for setting the scene. And I think one of the most important things that Mary said is that we're a department that's trying to meet people where they're at. So in terms of developing policy and implementing policy, collaboration and engagement and hearing from people on the ground in terms of everyday challenges, concerns and what you need is a big part of how we will deliver our work and implement this new policy. So we'll give you all our contact details, we'll have nowhere to hide, and our doors are always open. So as Mamoba said there, you all got a copy of the Trading for Impact policy on the way in this time of year. It's the typical one for everybody in the audience, so we'll be testing you on it later. So I hope you all take it away, look at the policy and look at where you see yourselves in the policy and say, okay, I can contribute to delivering this policy. I don't think they've addressed this. I'd like to talk to the department and to our representative organisations about the challenges that we're having. So I will start the presentation before I get into trouble for timekeeping already, which no doubt I will do. So as Mamoba and Mary said, my name's Ciara Braids and I head up the Social Enterprise and Social Innovation Unit in the department. Just wanted to give you an overview of this unit in the department. It's a brand new unit in the department. We were only established this last June. And what it has done, it has brought social enterprise, social innovation, philanthropy, and just for good measure, to keep us honest, the charities legislation, all under one unit. So you can really see the kind of collaborations across social innovation, philanthropy and social enterprise. And we hope to work really smartly and efficiently to deliver synergies across those three areas. So really good, I suppose, strategic thinking by Mary and our management board in terms of putting that together. As you will see, an awful lot of the challenges across the three areas. So in terms of, I suppose, our policy background and where social enterprise sits in our department, we're very much, as Mary said, about rural, about community. Communities are at the heart of what we do. We're very people-focused and people-centric in terms of our thinking and how we deliver. We want to deliver both economically and socially and culturally for the communities and the people that we work for. Our mission as a department is to support these vibrant, inclusive and sustainable communities throughout Ireland. And our strategic goal is to enable the community, voluntary, charity, philanthropic and social economy sectors to contribute fully to civil society and also to be heard. And our strategic objective then is to support the development of social enterprise and social innovation. as key components of inclusive and sustainable recovery, bringing everybody together along the journey at the same time is really important and at the back of everything that we do. So in terms of our social enterprise policy, our key strategic objective was to develop and deliver a new social enterprise policy, which builds on the success of the first policy, which covered the period 2019 to 2022. So again, a really important setting the scene was the first policy, and it looked at really interesting areas and challenges. So we'll talk about how that impacted on the development of the new policy in a moment. So just again, to set the scene, one of the important, I suppose, deliverables in 2020, over the course of 2022, and it was published in 2023, was an exercise done on a national baseline data collection exercise for social enterprises. And we issued a call for tender out of the department in respect of this. And one of the things that we did was to include a social clause into this tender document to encourage the participation of social enterprise networks and experts in terms of delivering on this important piece of work. So the successful tender was a consortium of Amoric Research, CERI and the ILDN network. And I think some of the key findings of this report certainly surprised an awful lot of people in terms of the impact that social enterprise has in, not only in our communities and to our people, but also in terms of the economy as well. So some of the key things that jump out there are the total income of social enterprises, nearly 2.35 billion, a huge impact. There's nearly 75,000 volunteers in the sector as well, and over 30,000 of them actually sit on boards, which is a really important impact to our organisations. We need board members to have successful organisations. Women represent nearly 70% of the workforce in social enterprises. And again, 60% of social enterprises employ people through active labour market programmes. Really important in terms of reaching those people who have been outside the labour market and probably feel isolated and undervalued, and really good to see them, social enterprises, recognising the need to engage and employ these individuals. So again, a really important landscape in terms of the data, in terms of social enterprise. So that kind of sets the scene as to the sector and the ecosystem that we're dealing with in terms of social enterprises and when we talk about social enterprises. So I think it's a really interesting data to have, and hopefully we can look at improving those numbers and impacting those numbers further as we continue to implement the Trading for Impact policy. I suppose just moving on to the development of a new policy, and one of the key things that we were looking at was building on the progress made since 2019. And I think in order to develop the new policy, and I won't take credit for this because it was the old team in the department, as Mary mentioned earlier on, that really did the hard work in terms of the policy, and I just have the pleasure of implementing it, the easy part. So in terms of the new policy, I think one of the things that's really important was the need to look back before we can look forward. And the first policy, we had to do a deep dive in terms of what worked, what didn't work, equally importantly. What did we do well? What did we not do so well? And what did we not do at all? I think were key questions that we had to ask ourselves in terms of making sure that we have had a meaningful discussion in terms of the development of the new policy. So those were the three key objectives from the first policy. So we did a deep and dirty dive in terms of how we did in terms of delivering on those objectives. And interestingly enough, the first social policy, enterprise policy, was one of the first documents that were produced, policy documents that were produced by the new department, the then new Department of Rural and Community Development in July 2019. And really it represented the beginning of a new era and a commitment to developing social enterprise in Ireland. I think that was a big statement. It provided a commitment and showed a real value in terms of government's commitment to supporting and developing social enterprises. It was the first government policy in the history of the state aimed specifically at developing social enterprises, and recognising and supporting their economic and social potential. So there was, as I said, there was 23 actions under 3 objectives. They're the 3 objectives there. And again, one of the key things was recognised at an early point, and it's recognised across all the strategies that departments have produced and are implementing, is the necessity and the importance of collaboration, co-design and co-implementation of these policies. And I think one of the things that we do well as a department, we don't get praised for much as civil servants, but I think one thing that we do well as a department, and Mary mentioned it already, is we do engage and we do sit down with stakeholders and we try to make people meet people where they're at. So under the first policy, there was significant investment through targeted schemes for social enterprises to help them reach their potential. These included schemes such as the Scaling Up Fund and the ARISE scheme, which is the Awareness Raising Initiative for Social Enterprises, and also the Small Capital Grant schemes, again, were all implemented under the first policy. And as I mentioned, one of the key important priorities was the collaboration, not just with the sector, but across government in raising the profile and the impact of social enterprises and recognising their cross-cutting input into economic and social and environmental impacts. So at the end of the first policy, I think there was a better recognition around social enterprises and their many contributions to society. And it also, the policy also, implementation of the policy also helped to position them in terms of the broader economy, and they were really seen and advocated as important drivers for job creation with the real societal impact. So in terms of the first policy, it really set a strong foundational framework, but it was also recognised that in developing the new policy that social enterprises needed to be strengthened, they needed further recognition, they needed financial stability, and again, as the title and the words are very meaningful, position them to trade for impact. So that was where the thinking was in terms of the new policy. So the purpose of the new social enterprise policy it's twofold. It's to help cultivate and sustain strong and impactful social enterprises, and it's also to increase the scale and impact of social enterprise in Ireland. And you will see that word impact appears in both of those objectives. I am rushing here now. I have a lot to say, so apologies if I'm speaking too fast. So in terms of, I suppose, developing for the trading for impact, one of the things that was done, as mentioned earlier on, was the consultation. So I've just set out a few of the steps that were taken around there to ensure that everybody had a voice and an opportunity to contribute into delivering the policies. So there was a public consultation, a number of consultation networks. The department is also having bilaterals engaging with other government departments and agencies in terms of commitments there as well. We had the OECD involved as well, so the department had commissioned the OECD to do some research in terms of the development of the new policy, and this really provided us with a snapshot of how well the social enterprise policy was being implemented and had been implemented, and also to put our social enterprise policy into context in terms of other OECD countries. So to give us a little bit of a mapping in terms of where we were across the OECD scale. And as mentioned earlier on, the second piece of really important research was the baseline data exercise that was conducted. And I think once all of that had been done, we were very pleased to be able to get it approved by our management board, our minister, and also by the cabinet as well. So a really good effort, I think. And I think one of the important things about cabinet or government approval is it shows an cross-government commitment to delivering on the policy. So all government departments and agencies are committed to assisting and supporting the delivering of the Trading for Impact policy. So I've mentioned the two documents there in respect of what were really important in terms of framing our thinking in terms of Trading for Impact. And look, they're on our website. They're a really good read in terms of where we international comparisons, case studies, stakeholder engagement, key challenges and also our baseline data as well. So if you have an opportunity, I would recommend potentially having a look at them. Some of the key challenges that emerged as part of all of this work were around access to business supports. And again, one of the key things that we're trying to do in the new policy is to advocate for social enterprises to be eligible for trainings, for example, with the LEOs, and that's a strong theme within our new policy. We also looked at social impact measurement, and this is always a challenging issue, and I don't think anybody really has hit the nail on the head. And there's also, you talk about social impact, but you also talk about social value. So again, getting the balance right in terms of how we measure that and how we put our case forward and represent to the best of our ability the great work that social enterprises do in terms of social value and social impact as well. One of the other things that came up was the lack of unity in sector representation, and I think that this is something that the sector realises themselves, and they are working really hard to collaborate and work together to represent social enterprises and the voice of social enterprises in terms of policy and engagement with government in terms of making sure that the right supports and access to the right training is put in place. Awareness, again, is a continuing challenge, and this is addressed again in the new policy, how we can continue to raise awareness and the profile of social enterprises. Access to marketing and tendering. Again, how can we put in place an enabling environment to support social enterprises to do this, to put themselves forward for contracts, project deliveries, etc. Skills, again, the capacity building. One of the things that came out in terms of the OECD review was that business leadership, management skills for social enterprises really require further development, and it shouldn't be hard to access the services. It shouldn't be a really tiring task where you're shimmied from Billy to Jack in terms of trying to access services. And then knowledge sharing and peer learning opportunities, again, that it was identified that there weren't enough of these in place. So, as I said, those two critical pieces of research fed into the new policy in terms of our objectives and our actions. And as Mary has mentioned earlier on, these actually sit in the context of a wider suite of policy documents and strategy that our department have. They're all interlinked, they're all interplayed, and they all complement each other as well. So a number of these, Mary's mentioned them already, but we also have the documents and policies from other departments, such as the White Paper on Enterprise, and the whole of government circular economy strategy as well, where social enterprises have a key and important role to play. In terms of the objectives of the new policy, in terms of the objectives of the new policy as well, so the new policy has 5 key objectives. I won't go through them all. You all have a copy of the policy there, but you'll see they're really important. It's about awareness, it's about growing, sustaining, it's about supporting, it's about engagement, and it's about impact. So they're the key, I suppose, verbs that come out of those objectives, and that's what we hope to do over the work with you to do over the duration of the policy. So impact measurement, I think just wanted to mention it again. We are looking at how we can do this better, and we were looking for you, I suppose, in support of this. We're trying to, I suppose, make sure that we represent social enterprises and their value as much as we can, and impact is a big part of this. I know it causes a headache for people in terms of, well, what do you want us to say? So I think there's a real opportunity under this framework to really kind of think about how social enterprises best produce information and data on their impact. The other big thing is the strong focus on supporting the green transition, and that's something that's come through the new policy as well. And again, we have put in actions to support social enterprises to avail of new measures to help in the delivery of our climate action targets. Another thing I just wanted to point out was the change in definition. And you'll see on the left is the definition that was in the 2019 policy, and on the right is the definition in the new policy. And it's a very nuanced change, and it's about You'll see it there, reinvesting surpluses fully or primarily into achieving social objectives. And it's just a little nuance change. But I suppose this was done very much to alleviate some of the challenges and the barriers that were in place to provide additional clarity, particularly where social enterprises were engaging with outside investors and stakeholders. And really the objectives of this change was to provide clarity, for example, to allow for share options in exchange for strategic investment. And an example of this is the Enterprise Ireland High Performance Startups. It also allows social enterprises to adopt a cooperative model, and the change allows for dividends, for example, to be paid for members. And it also allows for a drawdown of profits in order to make a livable income. Again, a barrier to young entrepreneurs setting up social enterprises because they felt that they couldn't earn a living wage. So again, a very nuanced change there. The policy implementation will take place over 4 years. As I said, it's 57 actions under 5 key objectives. Our intention very much is to implement it through a collaborative approach, and we will be establishing a Trading for Impact stakeholder engagement group to discuss the key issues, to help us plan and to make sure that we're putting in place the supports that are very much needed on the ground. We will be publishing annual updates as well to map and show our progress, and one of the things that we will be doing is continue to develop the baseline data that we have on social enterprise through commissioning a social enterprise census. Just again to say some of the challenges that will be coming out through the implementation of the policy that we hope to address is ones around this, the absence of a specific legal recognition and how we can address this challenge. Again, the fact that charitable status that sometimes are adopted by social enterprises can, I suppose, really blur the lines in terms of grants between and the differences or the nuanced difference between social enterprise and non-profit organisations and how we can tackle that. We also want to look at how we can address and reinforce misconceptions among conventional financiers in terms of social enterprises who have very limited or no capacity to generate income from trading. How can they avail of a range of financial products that actually fit their needs and fit their business model, etc. Again, we were looking at through the new policy, we're looking at the challenge that micro and small enterprises face, and social enterprises as well, part of that demographic. They often experience greater challenges or difficulties in accessing revenues through public procurement, and this is flagged for attention in the new policy. And it's also being flagged for attention nationally through our new our new policy on procurement that's being developed, and green and social procurement is going to be a big part of that in terms of how we move forward in terms of public procurement. Again, we're looking at supporting social enterprise to strengthen your own capacity regarding corporate governance, business strategy, risk management, planning and marketing. Again, making them more attractive to financiers, to investors, to grant makers, to philanthropists, etc. And as I've mentioned already, to maintain the momentum in terms of data collection to make sure that we have an evidence base that supports real and meaningful impacts for the sector. We really want to make sure that the ecosystem benefits from the provision of capacity building for social enterprises, and there are a number of things happening across the department in various different areas that will be supporting this. It's a key objective of our department to continue to expand the range and access to skills development for social enterprises and for the non-profit sector in general. And particularly in the area of social innovation, we are doing this through a new ESF Plus Social Innovation Fund as well, which will be providing supports and mentoring supports and grants to social innovations. And we'll also be engaging very much with DFERS on the additional funding we made available through the National Training Framework to address skills requirements for social enterprises to build up the skills for the future. I don't know how I'm doing for time. In terms of partnership with the sector, Mary has mentioned the tender and the partnership and collaborative approach that we have in place to deliver on a number of actions, including the conference here as well. But in terms of the next year, they will also be working with the department to deliver awards, to deliver regional networking events, and also to pilot a transition year programme for social enterprise awareness as well. I suppose, again, some of the things that we are doing at the moment in the department is the hybrid social finance loan scheme. And you probably all saw the lovely gold coins on the table. The QR code is actually from Rethink Ireland, and that's the link to the hybrid loan scheme, which is open now at the moment. The growing social enterprise scheme as well is another one that was launched earlier on this year, and it was for grants of between 1,500 and 100,000 for projects to help social enterprise grow and scale their operations. And it was for funding to provide building works renovations or for the purchase of new equipment to support delivery of your social objective. Applications have closed for this fund, and we hope to inform the successful social enterprises in the coming weeks in respect of that. Just to say that we were usually oversubscribed for that, so there obviously is a big, massive demand in terms of the sector for that. 5 minutes left, okay. Just in terms of, I suppose, the supports available for social enterprise, not obviously typically sitting under our unit, but across our department as a whole and other government departments as well. So just to give a shout out to them, some of you might be aware of, some I'm repeating what's been said before, and some might be new to you. So just to mention very quickly, the Community Services Programme, this supports about 430 community-based organisations to provide local social, economic and environmental services through a social enterprise model. It provides annual co-funding contributions towards each full-time equivalent position being supported and towards the cost of employing a manager, with around 1,700 full-time posts and 340 manager posts supported. So again, a big support system for social enterprises that's done in our department. Following on from that, there was another support programme that was announced on the 4th of October, and it was the Achieve Together Social Innovation Coaching and Mentoring Programme. And this is available to community services programme organisations for a period of 12 months. It's supported on the European Social Fund for Social Innovation as well. And it's bespoke mentoring training for CSP organisations. We also have SICAP, or the Social Inclusion and Community Activation Programme. And I think you would all be very much familiar with the work and the impact of SICAP. But just to say that since 2018, SICAP has supported over 1,000 different social enterprises by providing training for target groups involved in social enterprises. And additional SICAP supports for social enterprises include provision of advice, business supports and grants up to a maximum of 2,500 a year. Social enterprise also received grants from SICAP, or social enterprises over this period have received over 500,000 grants through SICAP. So again, the LEADER programme is a multi-annual programme for rural development. It's a community-led approach to rural development and plays a really important role in supporting communities and enterprises to grow in terms of job creation, social inclusion and environmental projects. It's administered locally by the LAGs, the local action groups, who select and award funding. And in this way, LAGs can develop plans that support social enterprises. So for the LEADER programme, the last LEADER programme that finished in 2022, there were just over 351 projects who identified as social enterprises, supported and were awarded just over or approximately 17 million worth of funding. So again, another thing to explore. And in terms of this LEADER programme, the 2023 to 2027 LEADER programme, it has specific funding parameters to accommodate social enterprises, so well worth the conversation with your local LAG in terms of access to this. Enterprise Ireland, again, one of the supports available through Enterprise Ireland is the high performance supports that I mentioned earlier. And this provides hands-on support and advice to early stage companies who are considered to have an innovative product, service or technology. So again, well worth a conversation with them. And then the Leo offices, there are 31 across the country. And again, we're working with the Leos to ensure access for social enterprises to these services, because they really are a one-stop shop for providing information on all government supports available for the small and medium enterprise sector. Their policy was published earlier this year, and it sets out clearly that social enterprises are eligible for Leo assistance, provided they operate on a commercial basis and meet the eligibility criteria. There's others there. 2 minutes, okay. There's the active labour market programmes. As I said, 60% of social enterprises employ staff through these programmes, a really important initiative. And then there's the European Social Fund, again, the new social innovation piece of that. So as I mentioned earlier, there's 2 phases to this. The first phase, hopefully, will be awarding the tender shortly. And phase 1 establishes a social innovation hub to develop the social innovation ecosystem in Ireland and support innovative projects, including direct supports to projects that are selected under phase 2 of the new solutions. So again, it's a one-stop shop for supports, advice, where you can go for skills, training, mentoring, and just even to network. It'll be providing a huge source of information on case studies, European funding, etc. So I could say loads more about that, but happy to talk to anybody if they want to talk to us about that. So suppose now, finally, just to say these are our next steps in terms of delivering the policy. It's the stakeholder engagement group, commencing our social finance working group as well. We intend to encourage greater level of collaboration between the bodies, the networks and the department. We intend to advocate and engage with other government departments and agencies on supporting social enterprises. We look forward to addressing the key challenges that I've identified earlier on. So look, there are contact details here. I'm being run off the stage. Thank you very much for listening to me, and looking forward to meeting you all over the course of the day. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Ciara, for that really insightful and deep overview of the policy. It's really great to see the changes and how you've taken a lot of the research and the feedback of the sector on board to really create this policy that we have for the next 4 years. I'm very excited. I hope you took some notes. I took a lot of notes down. And again, the contact details are there to support if you have any further encouragement, questions, and even feedback also. But if you remember last year, we had the opportunity to spotlight emerging social enterprises in Ireland. And this year we're doing something a bit different. We're going to be spotlighting 3 social enterprises from rural areas in Ireland, and they'll be speaking about their work and their social impact. So I would love to spotlight the first social enterprise this morning, which is Common Knowledge, and their co-founder, Fionn Kidney, is going to be here to speak a bit about their work. Fionn, I'll pass over to you.
Thanks, Mamobo. I'm not here to fix the podium, don't worry. But I am honoured to be here today to talk to you about the work of our non-profit social enterprise, Common Knowledge, in the beautiful Burren in County Clare. John suggested I bring along an object today, and I thought, what better for a room full of people who are interested in driving impact than an impact driver. This is a tool I didn't even know the name of, much less know how really to use to its best possibilities. Until I attended a pop-up build school being run by the builder Harrison Gardner in 2021. At the course, I learned to use tools like the Impact Driver, but also experienced the joy of building a building myself and with other people. I got chatting to Harrison about how inspiring and how empowering it was feeling for the rest of the group that week. After just a few days learning together, people were just ecstatic. Beyond the building skills I think that people were learning, it was transforming people's self-confidence. It was building a new sense of community. And coming out of COVID, personally, for me, it gave me great hope for the future. We started some conversations that week that resulted in the establishment of Common Knowledge about 3 years ago. And though we had very different perspectives and experiences, we shared a belief that both people and communities are losing the abilities they once had to solve our own problems and to meet our own needs when it comes to shelter, when it comes to food, when it comes to sustainable ways to live in the face of a climate emergency. And we saw skill sharing as a possible solution. So the mission of Common Knowledge is to support people and communities with the skills for truly sustainable life, skills like building, making, mending, and growing, skills that can transform the type of lives that we're creating. Today I want to tell you about 3 ways we work with people and communities. The first is our skill sharing courses. That Build School I went on, the 5-day Build School, is now our keystone course and has had more than 700 people take it since 2021. Roughly 60% of participants are women. Already we're seeing success stories from people who've been to Build School, like Deirdre O'Sullivan in Cork, who once lived in a mobile home and credits Build School with helping her on her journey towards living in a self-designed, self-built home, now for less than half the cost it would have been if a builder had built it for her. We really believe that people learn by doing. So on each Build School, we build a 25 square metre deconstructible wooden frame building, and we donate this building as a kit, along with a place on our Build School, to a social enterprise in need of additional space. If your social enterprise is interested in having additional space to achieve your mission, I'm going to be popping a link into the SERI WhatsApp group later on today, where you can let us know you're interested for next year, and we'd love to hear from you. This year, over 500 other people attended our other 23 courses that we run now at Common Knowledge. For example, learning basic DIY and repair skills, how to make kitchen cabinets, how to create furniture or make their own homewares, learning how to lay foundations or build a wall or plaster a building, how to sew, how to forage, or how to cook delicious plant-based food. Across our courses, we've had almost 2,000 participants since 2021, and we hear constantly people reporting a higher level of self-confidence, and it's about 100% increase in their own levels of self-confidence and what they can achieve. One story that we hear again and again is that finally learning to use a power tool like this impact driver can be a transformative moment of self-confidence and self-belief. Many have reported going on to build their own homes, to renovate their homes, or even to help each other by running metals with each other. To improve accessibility to our courses, we offer tiered pricing, and we invite those who can pay more to help subsidize others. But for many, paid courses are still not accessible, which is why we run our community projects, our next way of engaging people. Each project works to engage and connect our diverse local community through skill sharing and supports them in addressing common concerns and meeting their own needs through events and workshops. This year alone, our projects have engaged over 3,000 people. All of our projects aim to address social inclusion and integration of those most marginalised, and especially relevant in our rural context. In our area, like many rural areas, there's a large number of people living in new communities from the Ukraine and also in direct provision. And this presents the need for activities that can foster social integration. The good news that working with our hands, working in nature, and practical skills have universal appeal. This year, our Common Ground programme built the capacity of a diverse group of 200 people in North Clare to take local climate and biodiversity action, including people from those new communities, with the support of Rethink's Impact for Munster Fund. It resulted in 93% of participants reporting increased community connection, 100% reporting new skills, and 8 hands-on climate action metals throughout North Clare. We're now looking for other partners to help us bring this initiative to other communities in Ireland, so let us know if you're here and you're interested. But we also recommend checking out Rethink's Impact for Munster Fund, as it's just reopened for applications. A second project we ran this year was our Heritage in Action programme, which saw more than 50 free events across the year, sharing traditional skills and providing space for the culture that surrounds these skills, including traditional music and storytelling, with the support of the Heritage Council. A highlight of the year was our Rekindle Festival of Lost Skills in Ennistimon, an intergenerational festival celebrating the exchange of traditional skills, bridging generations and cultures. Rekindle had more than 1,000 participants, and about 80% of people reported that they learned a new skill. A final project we ran this year was Queer Sheds, a pilot riffing off the brilliant Men's Shed model aimed at creating a new type of space for LGBTQ+ people to share practical skills while building community, particularly in rural Ireland, with seed support from Clare County Council, the Clare Local Development Committee and the Dormants Account Fund via the Department of Rural and Community Development. 96% of participants this year said they learned a new skill, 100% said they feel less isolated and more connected to other queer people, and one person told us, "It's truly changed my life as a non-binary trans person living in the Burren." As with our courses, our community projects, skill sharing might be the medium, but the outcomes they are driving really is community resilience, social connection, confidence, and the capacity for action. As well as sharing skills, we now share the space at our centre too, which has given us a third way to engage people as visitors. In 2023, we found a dilapidated 50-acre retreat centre for sale in the Burren, and inspired by our board member Mick Kelly from GIY, asked our community to get behind the purchase with a crowdfunder and with low-interest loans. In total, to our absolute surprise and delight, more than 500 people donated to provide the deposit, and 36 people loaned us €600,000 between them to complete the purchase. Over 1 month last year, another 200 people turned up to help us renovate the property. As a social enterprise, having this home has been a game changer in terms of our capacity to run courses, host community projects, and generate additional income to support our mission. Already, it's become a bustling site of learning, of culture, of community, and of crack. With event space for up to 150 people, the centre has also become an active community centre, used by a broad range of people and groups in the locality for activities like music and set dancing, rehearsals, community gatherings, and fundraising events for those affected by the genocide in Gaza. We have a lot of capital works to undertake to realise the centre's full potential, but we've already brought the organic gardens back to life. We've relayed the nature trail throughout the 50 acres, and we're working to restore the biodiversity and soil health of the land. We can accommodate up to 30 people overnight, and the centre is slowly gaining a reputation as a regenerative ecotourism destination, creating new opportunities for local employment and for us to generate mission-supporting income while staying true to our mission. We've especially enjoyed seeing the centre become a place that other groups and organisations and social enterprises use to spend meaningful time with each other. With up to 30 people staying with us, engaging with our land, enjoying the food, and using our meeting spaces for their gathering, punctuated with short, hands-on, common knowledge experiences like wild tea foraging or building a bird box. Overall, the centre is becoming a living, breathing example of what's possible when a community comes together to create something meaningful. So to finish, back to impact drivers. Tools like this don't work by themselves. They need power, they need skills, and ideally a team working together. Social enterprises are no different. We're tools for change, but we need people to pick us up and to power us forward. If you know somebody who could benefit from learning a new skill, whether to build or make or mend or grow, please send them our way. If you're planning a conference or a team gathering or a community retreat or a social enterprise conference, please choose a social enterprise or community venue and support their work. Your spend will amplify their impact. If you're a funder, please come to visit us in rural areas. Visit us in person to see our work firsthand. And remember that a house is not built overnight. We need long-term partnership and support to build our teams, to drive income and lasting impact. And with the right tools and the right people, we can build so much more than houses and gardens. We can build hope and capacity and connection. So let's keep building together. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Fionn. Again, that was Fionn Kidney from Common Knowledge. It was great to hear the impact that their organization has been making. So I hope you guys have taken a lot in that we've done this morning so far and really made notes, really made engaged in your experiences here so far. So we're going to be taking a bit of a break now. Again, if you have made some connections, seen some old faces, seen some new faces, I really encourage you to make those connections. And if you are on the social media as well, I really encourage you to use the hashtag #SoSentIRL. We will be coming back at 11:30 to talk with our panel on maximizing traded income for social enterprises. I'll see you then. So as we come to the second portion of our day, we are going to be having a wonderful panel discussion on trading for impact. One thing that I do, I present a show on News Talk, and I talk to a lot of social entrepreneurs. I talk to a lot of people in the impact space. And one thing that quite frustrates me sometimes is oftentimes we forget the enterprise in social enterprise. So it's great to see that the theme for today is trading for impact, and we're going to be having a panel discussion on that now. And the panel discussion is facilitated by Chris Gordon from the Irish Social Enterprise Network, and joining Chris is 3 leaders in this space. That's Maeve Monaghan, CEO of Now Group, Kim Mackenzie Doyle, the instigator of The Big Idea, and Sam Mullen, the founder of The Third Space. Give everyone a warm welcome.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. How is everybody? Yeah? You know, you got coffee. That was good. Welcome to the National Social Enterprise Conference. Fantastic that we have inundated with the amount of ticket sales and people in online. And it's just fantastic to see the growth. Talking about growth, we've got fantastic organizations that are social enterprises. Perhaps they're going to introduce themselves, if that's all right. So I'm going to give you the floor a little bit. Sean, kick off. Tell us a little bit about Third Space, who you are and what the organization does.
Sean Mullen, Third Space, which is a cafe and catering business based in Smithfield. 25 employees, going for 13 years.
25 for 30. Good Lord. Brilliant. Fantastic. Based in Smithfield, operating as a social enterprise. How's that different from? We'll talk about it. Okay, sorry, William.
Hi.
Maeve.
Hi there, I'm Maeve Monaghan. I'm the Chief Executive of Now Group. And the organisation was born in Belfast, now operates across Northern Ireland and into Dublin and expanding across the island of Ireland. And we support people with intellectual disabilities and autism into Jobs for the Future. We have a range of businesses, including Love Catering, our Jam Card initiative, and we have an employment service as well.
For the crack. Thank you so much. And Kim, brilliant.
I'm Kim from The Big Idea. I'm instigator and CEO. We're a relatively young organisation. We're going into our 5th year. We empower young people to solve local and global challenges through innovative education and industry collaboration.
Fantastic. Bit of diversity here because we obviously have both regions in that. We have food and we have corporate involvement, schools, youth empowerment and all that. But this is about maximising. I'm sure there's a million ways we could be talking about this in social enterprise. You're also up on all of the challenges and the opportunities. But focusing in on income for the moment, what are your income strands? What does that look like to you? How does it feel when you talk about social enterprise and it is about income? You know, where do you sit with that? Maybe Sean, I can...
Yeah, well, we sit in the fully self-supporting. We don't get any funding, so all of our income comes through trading.
Selling coffees?
Yeah, selling coffee, selling sandwiches to businesses, selling lunches, breakfast and lunches is big business for us. We're in a good area in Smithfield. When we set up, we didn't realize that there was possibilities of funding and things like that. So our only our only idea was to run a business that would provide a social benefit but would be financially self-sustaining at the same time.
It's sustainability through ignorance, but that was 12 years ago, though, fair, right? Was it?
Yeah.
We didn't know that these things exist. Well, they didn't really exist, to be fair, in the way that we know it now. But
It was you who told me we were a social enterprise. We didn't know we were.
Don't throw me under the bus, I'm in charge here. Sean, I am delighted that you have 100% income. Is that something that you see with your fellow social enterprises? You know, because 100% sustainable social enterprise, it's not necessarily unique, but it's most people get some kind of funding, right?
Yeah, I haven't done any research in that, so I don't know. But yeah, it's like I said, we didn't know there was other options when we started. but it has helped to create a certain kind of business because we live by our trading income. We talk about this dancing in the tension. So the tension between wanting to do a lot of social good and creating a viable business that will continue to trade in the future. That's in that tension between those two things. We've learned that that's where all the best stuff happens. You know, that we live there, work there, and it's a great place to live.
Well, fantastic, and you've obviously made an incredible success out of it, and Smithfield has grown in that time, which is extraordinary. Kim, generating income, obviously you need to sell something to somebody to be able to have the impact that you have with the youth groups that you're working with.
Yeah.
How does that all work for you? How do you feel about income? What does that look like to you?
Yeah, so one of our biggest challenges is our programs are completely free for students, parents and teachers, and we want to remain so. So fundraising is absolutely crucial to us. So our income is quite a mixed bag. So we've raised about 2 million over 4 years. Or it's actually over 2 million in 4 years, which we're really proud of, which is, in breaking that down, it's about 800,000 of government funding. So if there's anybody from the Department of Education here tonight, big love. Thank you very much.
Lock the door.
Yeah, don't get out because I will find you. But no, we're really appreciative of that. And that's through a mixture of departments, not all just Department of Education. We have corporates as well, so we have quite a number of corporate partners. We've worked with about 300 companies with all of our mentors. We've had 1,000 mentors on our programme. So we've essentially built an EdTech platform that allows mentors from anywhere in Ireland. We're a national programme, cross-border, that can support young people to develop solutions to any challenge that they're worried about. And mentors pay. Mentors pay €250 to mentor our students, so that is a really valuable source of income. And companies pay for teams to mentor as well. So we've raised just about $250,000 through corporates. So we've learned an awful lot through that process.
And what was that? That was like commodifying impact. You're like,
Yep.
Pay us and obviously help us, but obviously by doing that, this is the impact that you have with your €250. You've obviously broken that down into little chunks.
Absolutely. So we're helping them to achieve their goals, whether or not it's L&D goals or CSR goals, but we're working with them to achieve what they want to achieve, but we have it all wrapped up in an incredible and very successful bow that's winning international awards left, right and centre. So we're not shy about sharing what's happening. We actually have nobody in communications, which is really tough, but we do a really good job of communicating what we do in clever ways. So I can talk about kind of our impact reports and how we communicate that, and we do it digitally and automate them for each individual that's on a programme.
Which obviously cuts down on admin and makes it more profitable, which is really where you need the money instead of having loads back end.
Yeah.
Now, Maeve, your journey for the past while has led you down many different areas for income generation. I'd say you've seen all of the sides of all of the bits, both sides of the border now. What do you think about income? What is it? What does it mean for a social enterprise like the Now Group to do
I
that?
think it's really important to say it doesn't have to be one or the other.
Mm-hmm.
And there is a mix. And I think what we have found, so an example with Loaf would be, so that business turns over about 1.2 million at the moment, and we're scaling that to 2 million.
Catering, and that's the venue.
Catering, that's the catering piece. So that needs funding to get going.
Mm-hmm.
So I think one of the things we have to understand is if we're going to scale social enterprises, having them completely sustainable, no business or very few businesses can start off and scale without some kind of investment. So I think we shouldn't talk about funding as a dirty word, but we have to trade our way out of reliance on it. So that would be what we would do with Loaf. Jam Card would be another initiative that started off as a social innovation project that needed funding to get it, going as a tech alternative for inclusion, and then you trade the way out of that. So I think it doesn't
Just to
have
say
to
on
be...
Jam Card so people know, because people might come across the Jam Card, it's just a minute card.
Well, I would hope that everybody in the room has come across it, to be honest, but it's a card for people with hidden invisible disabilities that helps people get just a minute jam, just a minute of patience. And we have 180,000 Jam Card users now across the UK and Ireland, and 2,500 businesses paid to become Jam Card friendly organisation. And that revenue then ensures that anybody in the world who wants a Jam Card for free can have one. So that business is trading about just under 300,000 at the minute, and that will scale as well. But it wouldn't have been able to get started without funding to get it going. So it's not a one or another around that. And I think that's really important, particularly if organisations are struggling at the minute to think about that scale bit. We really need to look. The other thing I would say is, the income generation comes from contracts with government. It doesn't always have to be funded. The idea of social value contracts and government actually doing business with their sector is probably one of the areas where we have seen significant scaling and growth as well.
So let's talk a little bit about that, like actual trading, because that's social enterprises are selling services to organisations that want to buy them, and in return they get something, whether it's impact or they get some food or incredible, or they get some access to the services. That element piece, the startup bit, we have to invest in that type of social innovation at a very early stage through funding or those type of mechanisms to be able to get to the stage, because we can't often do investment in return for equity or for those type of things. I mean, it's really easy to set up a social enterprise right now, isn't it? I mean, it's a simple thing, isn't it? I mean, you guys are all generating income for the reasons.
I think the big challenge is, well, you just pointed to it, that it's a social enterprise, so people are not going to get a significant return on their investment if you're looking to private investors for that. So you've got to sell social impact as a way of winning people. Our funding came completely from private individuals who were willing to lend us money for a 5-year term. They were, at the time, the banks were paying almost zero interest anyway, so they weren't actually losing any money by leaving their money with us instead of with them. But yeah, the whole challenge was the potential for the social impact. That's what it was.
And we're talking about a little bit of investment, but just again, people are expecting a return if they invest in an organisation. They are getting a return. It's just social return, because you're advertising that. And remember, in the early days, you were writing those emails about like the impact that you were having with the cafe and what it was doing to the area, which is extraordinary. Maybe, Kip, is that setting up this thing? It's easy, right? Anybody can do it.
It is really easy to set it up. It's not,
Running
it's not so easy to do everything else. And that was, I think, for me, it was the biggest choice was to either set up a limited company or a CLG at the very, very start.
Choice.
And there was very little out there about CLGs or social enterprises. I actually had to look up the term because I was like, oh, that sounds fun, social enterprise. And it's probably not that fun at the early days. It's much harder than a startup because you have two bottom lines to achieve. You have the financial bottom line that you have to achieve if you ever want to be paid, and then the social impact bottom line that you have to almost do to prove that it's working before you get any funding.
And so you did that. You had your income kind of thought about and in business planning, and then once you hit the ground, you were into income generation immediately.
I had a business plan before anything. I don't think it was that fabulous looking back at it, but I had the business plan and went to the local enterprise office. And I just want to say, we've got 90K from our local enterprise office, and they have been a phenomenal support. So a massive shout out to Carlo Leo. I think are really, really progressive.
Carlo. You like Carlo?
Anybody else from Carlo? No. Oh. Anyway.
They're online.
So I would really suggest you keep knocking on that door because you will break it down if you
Carlo's got the money.
Success.
We all clear?
That's it.
Move to Carlo.
They're brilliant. And they were a massive support. So I've approached a social enterprise like a business to make sure that we can actually survive, because we have investments, but they're grants, it's loans, it's businesses, it's corporates. But we're talking to business people all the time because we want to mass collaborate. So we have to work. We have to work for them with numbers, and we have to work with government for numbers as well. So I think the more that we can approach these, everybody might kill me now, but it's more we can approach it like business people, I think the more successful we can be.
No, not at all. And I mean, you operate in a particular way, which is clearly social impact, but you got your start by convincing somebody it was a plan worth investing in.
Yeah.
That's good. I mean, Maeve, it is obviously a tricky business. I am being facetious when I'm saying it's easy to set up a social enterprise, but there's all those things. When I have to take you back now to Now Group, or even to some more recent innovations. Are you getting better now at setting up the enterprises?
Well, I think there's two things, and getting better at saying no to things that you can't make money in, and that's a really big part of getting the confidence when you're running a social enterprise, not to think you have a social mission that you have to do everything. But also, I think it is challenging, but there has been no better time. it is such an exciting time north of the border and south of the border for social enterprises to be contracting. The opportunities in relation to social value and procurement are much bigger than they were before. Businesses are all switched on now around their inclusion strategies and their ESG strategies. So they're wanting product. They're wanting social enterprise to have product that they can buy that helps work with that. So that's what we've always been very good in Now Group, of having product that business needs, that then drives the mission that supports our participants. So I think the challenge is laid to us in this room and other rooms to say, what is it businesses are going to buy and what are government going to buy? So that supply chain conversation is really important in procurement. And then you provide a product that people are going to buy, rather than what we did previously was focus on the products that we were delivering to our participants who could not afford it. So we focus on the product that businesses and the government will pay for, and then deliver the social value free of charge to our participants. And I think the whole idea of social value procurement is massive at the moment, and I just don't think we're tapping into it enough yet.
We should discuss that. We will be discussing that after the break, which is
Yeah.
good, so anybody who wants to come into that session. But it is true, we need to get into the tenders, we need to be talking about that. But you have clients, you have people who purchase from you. What's that relationship look like? How do you, how do you work with them to make sure that you're not doing something that you regret doing? Because this
Charge
is the thing
them
that
well, Chris.
this is what I'm
Charge
saying.
them well, have
But
confidence and charge them well.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But but you can't just do that, right? There has to be a whole thing.
Yeah.
What's that? What does that look like? Because you, and also just bearing in mind, I suppose you've both mentioned this, but you're kind of the same. Your client is buying coffee from you, is actually probably the service user that's benefiting from the social impact that you're generating. You have external funders who are paying for the people who can't necessarily afford it.
Yep.
What are the funders? What's that relationship look like to get that income, to generate that finance, to make it sustainable? Is it ongoing? Is it just it happens overnight? Is it a good product out there? They'll come to you. How tricky is that? How much do you put into it? Maeve, you're smiling.
I could get on a hobby horse and never get off it. I think we made a decision a couple of years ago, particularly with the loss of European structure funds in Northern Ireland, that I was done begging.
Yeah.
If you're a really good organisation like everybody in the room is, and you're delivering significant social value and really working with the most vulnerable communities, the money should come and you should get paid for your results. So that idea of begging for funding, we're done with. So the mixture of payment on results for contracts with government, funding if it's there, but not to change our mission to deliver on a fund, and making sure that we're looking at a tendering process as well around that. I think the challenge that I see north and south of the border is the ambition for us to scale. It's nearly like we need to support you because you're here and we want you to get to there. And I think if we're a sector going to be sustainable, we're here and we need to be there. And I think that bit about making money and not being afraid to say it is really important.
Can I come in on that? Because I think there's huge pressure to scale.
Yeah.
And the funding is linked to it, but the funding doesn't equate to the ambition.
Yeah.
So people, it's linked to funds, you have to prove it, but the money doesn't match what you actually need. So there's a lot of people in this room that can open doors and have links to funders. So if you really, really want us to scale, add another zero onto the grant, because it's money that will move it. It's not accelerator programs. We've done a lot of accelerator programs. It's phenomenal, and we needed it in the early days. But there's probably a little bit too many going around. We need the money, and we need to have the time, which is so precious, to continue to do what we're doing on the ground. So give us back time and add another zero, please. Sorry, just say that again.
Add 2 zeros. Go on, Sean.
I was thinking.
Our first chef who came from, he'd been in Las Vegas before he came to us. And he would say at every management meeting each week, he would say, trading income is vanity, profit is sanity.
Beautiful.
And I would like to throw out the idea that profit is not a dirty word, and that if we could, everyone will either make a profit or make a loss. No one hits zero, right? So you're either a not-for-profit or a not-for-loss. We're a not-for-loss. we have to make a profit. That's the way it goes. We're not a profit maximizing business, but we should be a profit making business. And if you look back at our story, we became profit making in the big picture last year. So it took us 12 years before we actually reached zero. So it's not like when we were starting, people were asking us, what are you going to do with the profit? Well, the people in the community sector were asking us, what are you going to do with the profit? The people in the business sector were saying, will you be able to make a profit? Yeah. That was the difference of the perspective. So I do think that for us, we have to make a profit simply to survive. And it's really important that we're able to do that. We can call it a surplus if you want, but I think we should call it a profit.
Yeah, I think it was surplus in the thing.
Yeah.
Sorry, anything about nomenclature? Words.
I just want to say something about going to zero. So if anybody's a CLG in the room, you kind of do want to be at zero in December so you don't pay tax on it.
Yeah, well, yeah.
So that's a tricky thing to kind of really manage your finances.
Well, you want to get tax if you've got profit, right? So,
yeah, so we're almost putting off payments. I don't know if you're right. Yeah, you can do that.
Yeah.
We're putting off payments.
Good time to announce it.
Well, I've said it now. To January from grant funders. We've money kind of waiting in January, but we have to be really clever at this time of year to kind of not look like we've loads of money for our audited accounts. Now that's not illegal. It's not illegal, is it? No. Anyway, but you do have to be clever with your finances, because there's nothing worse than paying tax on money that you're raising for something that you're doing really, really well.
But isn't this an interesting thing?
Yeah,
we had something which is, I don't know, bloody hell, COVID. Anybody? We had COVID-19. Anybody hear of it? No. Anyway.
Yeah.
But I always say social enterprises were the ones that closed the front door and they opened the back door. They stopped their profit-making thing and they just did the work that needed to be done. But you need reserve to be able to do that. And I know an awful lot of social enterprises were the ones that day one, roll up the sleeves, let's make all this work. For-profit enterprises, a lot of them sort of had to close the doors, whereas it was quite tricky.
Yeah.
Now, by the way, because the purpose of it was to help the social and community fabric and make all that work, I'm very interested in that idea of reserves and how do we make sure that good people in good jobs in social economy get paid well.
Yes.
And that's about having a reserve to see can we pay next year and a little bit more. So those are really good questions. We have a limited amount of time, as you can all see. I did ask you if you wanted to be able to say or leave this incredible, beautiful looking audience, the most beautiful audience, with any takeaways, things that you wanted, stuff that you found interesting, things that you want to have them walk away with. Is there anything? Oh, you've got, maybe you could, well, I got another 2
hours, I think.
2 hours. Yeah, we're going to get started. Well, no, actually, I'm going to go on this anyway. Do you want to be able to tell us what that takeaway is for our audience?
Oh, don't look at me.
Yeah. I suppose when I have the platform, I would say that the real opportunity, I think, is around opening up supply chain and procurement to allow businesses to trade better. I was interested in the recent National Procurement Awards in Dublin, where there was a category for social value and we applied, and they couldn't assess our award because there was nobody else in Ireland applied. Now, that might be the process, it might not, but I think it says a lot more about how many social enterprises are contracting with government. So I think when we're looking at funding streams, I think businesses and government need to look at where they're spending their money. It's not all about giving to, doing on to us. It's also about flexing your supply chain so that we can do more business together. And I think we as a sector need to be a bit braver about lobbying around that, because the money that government spends and the business spend is massive.
Yeah, well,
and that's an income stream.
We will be talking about this later, and I think it is something we know we're behind on this. Like you in the north have a more social value.
Yeah, I think there's a social value scoring, and it could look like we're a lot more advanced. I don't think we're as far advanced as we should be, and I think there's still that piece of us being, offered contracts that the private sector don't want. But I think the potential to do business and contract differently is a real opportunity, and I just think the sector just needs to have a bit more confidence in their worth.
And if you don't mind, I know you have an extra minute or two, so I'm still going to allow it, but can I just double down on something? You do have those private sector contracts.
Yeah.
When those contracts come out, you've got 6 weeks, 8 weeks to be able to go and meet the criteria, figure it all out,
Yeah.
go onto eTender's platform and then submit the thing.
Yeah.
All of the work has to be done well in advance of that. So you need to be meeting these businesses.
Absolutely.
I want in your supply chain, this may come up. If it does, we want to be there. But you have a quick story about that?
Oh, a quick one. Well, I suppose we have it with Belfast City Council, for instance. Now, there's some contracts where people will reserve, in the UK legislation, they can reserve contracts for
Which we
certain
have
types
here.
of social enterprises. It rules out a lot, but it has an opportunity for an organisation like ours. But we've contracted with national museums for Northern Ireland in the past, the local councils, and that's competing with the private sector. So I think we have as good a product with the added value, and I think we just need to do more of that. But it requires government to look at what they're spending and tell the sector what they're going to be buying and try to support us to be able to do more business with that. So, you know, social impact, social value, procurement aren't individual things. They're all collected
Yes.
so that we can trade more, make more money and deliver more social value.
Absolutely. Sorry,
Can
Kimmy.
I pick up something as well? So Enterprise Ireland popped up earlier on as one of the funding supports. CLGs can't approach Enterprise Ireland because we're not Enterprise Ireland clients. We can approach them as a Leo client. So that's important for people to know because I did my homework around that. And we accessed a Grad Start programme, which was 15K for 2 years each year for a recent graduate hire. So I highly recommend everybody checking that out. But that's the only thing we can get from Enterprise Ireland. And I would classify the Big Idea as a high potential social enterprise. We can't get investment from Enterprise Ireland, and their key criteria is employment and export. We are employing. We have 9 on the team and 1 full-time member, our full-time consultant based in the north. And we can't hire that person without setting up in the north, which is restrictive for us. And we have been cited in OECD reports as best case example, the only Irish organisation to be noted. We've won international awards out the hoo-ha, and it's so frustrating that we can't long-term plan because there's no long-term grants, bar Rethink. So shout out to Rethink for having 3-year grants. It's incredibly tough to plan if you do not have long-term funding and long-term income streams. So we are essentially still a startup. We operate like a startup, so we're quite scrappy. We know how to get the money and we work really, really hard to get it, but the funnel is huge, which requires time away from impact. So we're fundraisers now almost, rather than actually creating the impact. And we have worked with 10,000 students across Ireland, but we could have worked with 40 or 100,000 students if we had the time back on actually working on what we wanted to do. So I just wanted to make that point that we need long-term funding avenues for everything that we do in the room, and I'm sure a lot of people agree.
And it
Sorry.
is messy, right? The
Very
enterprise are
scrappy.
the enterprise. You know, we're getting there. Like, it's probably better than it was. We already mentioned
I
that.
do think we have been able to access, we're doing a lot of lobbying in the north around opening up mainstream programs for social enterprise and supporting social enterprises to know their worth and know that they're welcome and that they can apply. So there's some conversations going on with Invest NI, which would be the equivalent obviously in the north, and Intertrade Ireland, who are here today to talk about the mainstream program. So we've been very lucky in the Acumen program to be able to, because we have a product
employ
that we're
somebody.
selling, employ somebody, and it meets a percentage of the cost within a year. So we're doing that with Jamcard.
And all those Enterprise Ireland clients and Intertrade Ireland clients, all they're doing is making money for the people, right? At least, you know, you're doing that and you're making all the social and environmental stuff as well. Come on, people, we can do better. Sean, Enterprise Ireland, you're going to export now.
I think we might be a bit away from that yet. But I do think that for us, you were asking earlier about trading and relationships. For us, the challenge is to be the best in our field, apart from the fact that we're a social enterprise, so that the product that we're offering is as good as anybody else is offering. And then in addition to that, you have that extra social value. So that's been the challenge for us. The other thing I think that organizations like ours bring to the table is there's a quality or a level of relationship with your customers, with your clients, that you won't get when you're dealing with simply straightforward for-profit. That's a huge thing in our business, that you develop those kind of relationships, whether it's customers who come into us or people that we're delivering to. And that in itself generates business. You know, that it brings more
An
business
interest,
in.
and it's
Yeah.
more, you know, you're not just
Yeah.
one of many, you're actually unique.
Yes, and that's the whole thing. A couple of weeks ago, a customer came into Third Space who hadn't been around since COVID. So whatever had happened in her life, she'd gone. But she came back one morning, and I just happened to be at the counter, and the girl serving her said, "Hi, I haven't seen you in ages, you know," and all that, you know, welcome back. And then she said to her, "Skinny latte, isn't it?" And you should have seen that woman's face. It was like she remembered what coffee, even though she hadn't been in for 3 years. So that level of relationship is part of what helps us to generate our income, you know, and it's doing good at the same time.
Well done.
That's the
Okay.
magic.
Final thing from you all, which is just that, you know, shout out, what can I purchase from you and where?
So you can learn more about The Big Idea on thebigidea.ie. And I'm always on LinkedIn. I love LinkedIn. And I'm really happy to talk to anyone, especially anybody with funding.
On it.
Unrestricted.
Yeah,
Particularly
long term.
Carlow or adjoining counties.
Yeah, I'll
Beautiful.
travel.
Excellent. Well done. Excellent.
Probably coming up to Christmas is shout out to Loaf Pottery that's sold online.
good.
Going into the Irish magazines, weekend magazines now, so that'll be an area of income generation for us. But I suppose if there's anybody in the room with any form of hidden disability who thinks or loves somebody with a hidden disability and thinks that Now Group could help them in any way, I think that's a really important piece. And Jam Card probably just spreading the message about that would really be appreciated.
Beautiful. Love it. Sean?
Use our cafe if you're in Dublin and you're running events, or there's all kinds of people use the cafe outside of our normal business operating hours, and we love the fact that it's so well used. So it's there for you as a resource if you're doing something for about 50 people or something like that.
Beautiful.
Our
that's like
space is
catering.
yours, yeah.
Love it. That is our panel for the moment. Thank you very much to everybody. If you bring a round of applause for Kim, for Maeve, and for Sean, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chris. That was a wonderful panel. I don't know if about you, but I was in the audience nodding, writing down, saying, yeah, saying all the notes that they were taking away, and I hope you took something away from that yourself. So moving on to our second social enterprise from a rural area that they're going to share their story and share their experiences that they have. I want to welcome on the stage Colm and John Galvin from the Living Woodlands social enterprise, who are going to share a bit about their story. Welcome on the stage, both of you.
Hello, my name is John, this is my brother Colm, and we're the founders of Living Woodlands. And we started Living Woodlands because, maybe as cliched as it sounds, we've always loved forests and trees. The name Nature Boy followed me all the way through school, and it definitely wasn't intended as a compliment. But we came to realize that there's an absence in the Irish landscape, and we're missing our native forests. And this really struck home for us one day when we were climbing in the Galties, and looking down from the top of Galtee Moor across the lowlands, we realised that there was no trees to be seen at all, apart from the occasional dark geometric block of non-native conifers. So we're told that 80% of Ireland was cloaked in forests, but now it is largely covered in grass. As if under every field there's a ghost of a forest. And all this grass is great for sheep and cattle, but it's very low in species biodiversity. So we wondered if there was anything we could do to improve the situation. So we spent 2 years researching and thinking about what is a very complex problem. And we came up with this idea of biodiversity havens, which are really a way of finding and creating space for nature in the heart of our communities.
Yeah, so what do? We create these biodiversity havens. And I know the word biodiversity is being used a lot these days. I mean, we use it a lot. Maybe to the point where it's beginning to lose its meaning. But I suppose a natural system, be that an ecosystem or even the human body, when it's in a balanced and healthy state, is always complex and biodiverse. So in essence, what we do is reintroduce this complexity and biodiversity, and therefore the health and resilience, into a degraded ecosystem from the beginning. Now, this may sound somewhat grandiose, but it's actually about mimicking what would naturally occur in nature, but over a much, much longer period of time. So what we've come to call biodiversity havens are a range of ecological interventions that can be adapted to suit almost any space. And these can include the creation of mini woodlands, larger community woodlands, permaculture orchards, native hedgerows, biodiversity corridors, and so on. So I suppose the first step, working with a school or a community group, we identify a piece of underused or neglected land that is suitable for restoration.
And then the next step in all our projects is to ensure the health of the soil on site and to really try and create the optimum conditions for the network of mycorrhizal fungi in the soil, this sort of hidden incredible web of life in the soils that are the cornerstone of the healthy ecosystem as a whole. And then depending on the type of intervention, whether it's a hedgerow or a mini woodland, we carefully select the appropriate native plant and tree species. The planting plan is designed to mimic the patterns and conditions we would find in a native woodland. And the planting day is always organized to include local community and local school children, really trying to foster a sense of ownership and stewardship of the haven. So one incredible result of this approach is how quickly the trees grow. And because the trees grow really quickly, they also rapidly sequester carbon, and there's a huge range of other ancillary benefits, including noise and air particulate pollution reduction, reducing the heat island effect, and ameliorating flood risk. But really for us, biodiversity is not an abstract, a metric to be measured that some of those technical terms can imply. These havens are first and foremost really beautiful places to be. You're surrounded by trees, they're full of life, insects, and birdsong. They're pockets of wild nature. And we are part of nature, and spaces like these are essential for human health and well-being.
Since we founded the enterprise about 2 years ago, we've created 8 biodiversity havens so far, mostly in the North Munster region, 1 in Cork and 1 in Kildare. We also helped community groups with funding bids and are working with them to complete their biodiversity action plans. I suppose these biodiversity havens have included small ones like the one in Newbridge, which is a microforest of about 50 square meters with 150 trees, to much, much larger projects like one we're working on with Rathban Community Golf Course in Limerick, which will include 6 biodiversity havens, which will form part of a trail, a biodiversity trail, there's the biodiversity again, which will be open to the local community as an amenity. And the interventions there will include a permaculture orchard of 25 native fruit trees, a pollinator-friendly corridor, and there will be an apiary on site nearby in the near future, as well as 4 bespoke forest islands containing up to 10,000 native trees. We're currently working on 12 projects so far this year. And although we take a certain sense of pride in this small achievement, we also realize it's really just a drop in the ocean.
So we are working toward a vision of an interconnected network of biodiversity havens all over Ireland. Imagine the possibilities if even a small percentage of these underused green spaces and grass areas in our towns and villages were reimagined and transformed into permaculture orchards, community gardens, and mini woodlands. And then imagine if these havens were connected by healthy hedgerows leading out into the countryside, connecting to larger community woodlands planted on marginal agricultural land. And what if instead of being bombarded with messages of anxiety and helplessness, communities were empowered and supported to have biodiversity impact right where they live?
So in order to make this vision a reality, we've realized we're going to have to adapt our business model and scale up. We have been operating like a regular business, marketing to and securing small amounts of funding from other businesses, but this is limiting our impact. We've researched similar organizations in Europe, in France, in the Netherlands, and Belgium, who are operating on the sort of scale we want to operate on. They have created hundreds and hundreds of similar biodiversity havens in their respective countries. One thing we noted in our research, though, is they all received key support at the beginning to help them scale up. And we feel we are now at this point.
So in an ideal world, we would find a sponsor to help us fund the creation of 50 biodiversity havens across Ireland, giving us national presence and impact. To achieve this would require in the region of €350,000. And secondly, staying in this ideal world, we would find a strategic partner to join our board to help us and advise us in the scaling up process.
So I'm going to finish with a personal insight or a reminder. It was a couple of weeks ago, and I had been working on our marketing campaign all morning. We were looking at like corporates and some large competitors, and ended up feeling completely deflated, like we were this small fish in a very big ocean of big fish and sharks. And coincidentally, that was the day John Logue invited us to speak at this conference. And I suppose I was reminded why we became a social enterprise, that there is this other way of doing business, one that is not focused on competition, but on collaboration and helping people. And that idea keeps us inspired, as I'm sure it does all of you here. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, I don't know about you, but I'm very inspired by that. Again, that was Colm and John Galvin, co-founders of Living Woodlands. Up next, we'll be having our second panel of the day, and that is all about measuring our social impact. One thing that I got from Kim as she was speaking of the bottom line for social enterprises is unique to our sector. It's a balancing of keeping financially sustainable and also the social impact, which is a driver for each and every one of us in this sector. So we'll be having a panel discussion on measuring our social impact, and it's facilitated by Philip O'Donnell from the Irish Local Development Network, and the panel includes Melissa Aslan from OECD, Stephen O'Connell from the Football Cooperative, and Caroline Gardner from Quality Matters and Social Value Ireland. Let's welcome everyone.
Have we got Melissa? We do. All right, welcome everybody. The topic of this panel is one that I think probably fascinates and frightens in equal measure to some extent. But we have a terrific panel here. And sorry, the screens in front of me went off, but I'm relieved to see we've still got Melissa behind me. We've got a terrific panel and a really interesting blend of perspectives as well. So we've got Melissa Aslan. Melissa is a policy analyst at the OECD team working on social economy and social innovation. She specialises in data on social economy, social impact measurement, internationalisation of social economy entities and social enterprise policy. We've also got Stephen O'Connell, who's founder of Football Cooperative, which is an award-winning social enterprise that uses recreational football as a vehicle to promote good physical, mental and social health among men. And lastly, we have Caroline Gardner, who is CEO of the social research charity Quality Matters, and who also runs two diverse social enterprises, We Make Good and Trauma-Informed Practice Ireland. She and her colleague Phil Izzard are Ireland's social return on investment trainers and international SROI reviewers. Quality Matters is also co-founder alongside the Wheel and White Barn Consulting of Social Value Ireland, helping organisations to implement good practice in impact measurement. Now, Caroline, I've put you under no pressure at all by introducing you as somebody that specialises in helping social enterprises to apply good practice in the measurement of social impact. So you might just open by telling us, why is it so difficult, are maybe regarded as being so difficult to measure social impact in this context?
It absolutely is a real challenge because we're trying to describe in a paper, in a way that people can understand the complexity of the change that we're creating in really complex environments. So it is hard to do, but it's also, it can be done. And so I guess those two hats are in tension. So in one side of it, as a consultancy that supports this being done, we understand what good practice looks like. And I would say, and I think we have an example of it in your own project, which is great, it can take 2 to 3 years. It involves setting up a framework. It involves then getting the information and refining it until there's a really good understanding of what impact looks like. So that's what it often looks like when it's done well. And then if I put my other hat on as someone who manages 3 different social enterprises, it's really hard because we're really busy. And we've heard that from everybody up here. We've got to, trade and make money. And so you're always going to prioritize that call from a new client. And then we also have whatever our social impact is. And We Make Good, we are working with people who have come from a refugee background or out of prison. And we're over 3 years teaching them to become very high-end tailors. I'm going to give an example, I guess, of a bit of the solution by using our own project is if we want to do it well, I think, absolutely setting up a framework. And then the next thing that we have to do is really think about how do we integrate this into our day-to-day work practice. Because if it's an extra thing that staff have to do, as it often is, like, here, fill this in for the funders or complete this report, people are like, oh, I've got so much to do. And they will prioritize spending time with their end users, they will prioritize the business elements. So how do we integrate it into a way that really makes sense? And I think the first thing is, who should this make sense for? And in the end, it's the people who we are there to support. They care the most about it, of course, because it's their lives. But often we don't think about it from that angle. So in We Make Good, how we've developed a framework that really helps, for instance, because this is just one example, is that we have a schema over the 3 years that looks at all of the skills that they have to use, both from a hard angle, i.e. how you make clothing, because they come out as very advanced tailors. And then we look at all the soft skills that people have to learn, and we've plotted that on a big, huge map. And we tie that to their work increments. So if they get a score across that board, we use it to do their work planning, their individual training plans, we tie it to their increments, and then when they go out into the workforce, we write a very detailed report on all of their skills, and there's this whole pack that can go with them to their next job. So we can get outcome data from that particular process. And that means, we're obviously doing it because it has to be done. It's tied into into the kind of day-to-day processes of our work. So I would say to anyone that's looking at it would be set up a framework and then look at how you make this part of your day-to-day work, where it's not about making a report, but it's about driving forward your business or your social impact goals. It takes a bit of thinking, but it absolutely can be done in that way.
Can you tell us a little bit about the process of developing that framework and how it came together?
Well, as social return on investment trainers and practitioners, we think that's a brilliant framework to use because it's underpinned by 7 principles, and those principles are really, really important. One of them is always go to your service users and get them to tell you what's important. And that seems like a real subtlety, but it's absolutely not. We've worked with a number of clients who, we all have our objectives. This is what we want to achieve. But it's not always the complete story, and it's not always what our service users most value. If we're going to drive impact, we need to know what our service users or our end users, whomever they are, what they care about compared to each one. And then we can put that into a framework, and we can look at various models to drive up that particular value. So there's a lot of things that social return on investment would have you get data on and understand, and you can do it on the back of an envelope just so that you're making kind of models and thinking through strategy, or you can do it in a way that you publish, which we'll hear about and which takes a lot of work. But I would say starting with that kind of framework and conceptual beginning is really useful for everything else that comes after that.
Okay, super. Thanks, Caroline. Stephen, Caroline has talked a little bit about the complexity of impact measurement. So if we just park the measurement bit just for a second and talk a little bit about impact, can you tell us in the context of Football Cooperative what impact actually looks like for you?
Yeah, thanks, Philip. I guess Football Cooperative, first and foremost, is a health intervention as much as a sporting intervention, and we see ourselves at the very front door of public health. Getting people active is a pillar in everyone's well-being. And I guess we're a gender-sensitised approach to health, which has been kind of echoed by Irish policy and strategy and European strategy as well. So effectively, impact for us in the early stages was quite visually in the physical health improvements you could see in the mobility of guys going around the football pitch, the way the visual complexion of a guy who lost weight, or you just look better in yourself. And it was also audible because we do off of the pitch meetups and goalpost chats and different pieces, and you could hear from guys mentally and socially the games and the physical activity were providing great impact to them. So for me, that nearly compelled us to maybe invest more into our impact measurement and kind of try to understand it more than just anecdotal evidence that we were kind of seeing in the first stages.
Super. And you have invested, and I don't just mean monetarily in that, but I know you've invested a huge amount of your time and energy into doing that measurement process. You might just talk to us a little bit about the how and about that journey that you've been on in impact measurement.
Sure. I think for us, we were kind of seeing great participation and great impact on and off the pitch, but there was a great mandate to actually do more. So we are in a privileged position to actually have formed an enterprise academic partnership with the Southeastern Technological University and a fantastic academic team that are really adding a robustness to our impact measurement that we wouldn't have been able to achieve on our own, and gathering support, or even just to get funding to measure it at such an early stage probably wasn't going to be achievable. We would have been pointed in other directions first. But the academic partnership was formed in 2021, and it set out to fund a PhD student and the academic team to investigate the feasibility of football cooperative intervention through an impact measurement that was looking at the social return on investment and the value that football cooperative is creating. And I guess what that has kind of unfolded to be is really intense data collection process over 12 months, investigating, I guess the primary beneficiary is the participant, but also others such as the volunteers that help run the football cooperative games, community partners, the pitch owners and others in the community that support it, and also the significant others that are the participants, family members and other halves, etc. And I guess what the research has really come to us is that from a participant's point of view, it really verifies what we found in our own minds in the first stages. Physical health is improved considerably, aerobic fitness is doubled, physical activity is improved. You also have mental and social health improvements, reduction in loneliness and feelings of loneliness, which is quite prevalent in middle-aged men, I guess. And also what you found is health behaviours off the pitch were improved as well in terms of increased physical activity for them and lifestyle choices, I guess, in alcohol and fruit and vegetable consumption. But other pieces that the research looked at, which was really impressive, was the volunteers, and a lot of social enterprises are led in many ways, and a fundamental resource to the social enterprise sector is volunteers. So to have undertaken the research has enabled us to understand that, by being a volunteer, you improve your self-worth, you improve some real soft and hard skills to make you more employable or even advance your career, but it also improves your social connection as well, which is phenomenal kind of outcome, especially for me. And I guess the other key partner was the significant other, and they spoke quite vividly about how the impact for them is having a greater person in their lives, a more energised, more present person in their lives, and how that person has become a better role model for their family and for the people around them. And ultimately, the feasibility study adjudicated that like football cooperative does have significant social value. The SROI methodology calculated for every €1 invested in football cooperative would equate to €17.60 in social value, which was giving it 2 thumbs up to obviously help us, really circle the wagons and go, this can have significant population health benefit if we wish to go forward at scale.
Excellent. A couple of things strike me as interesting. I suppose the first is that, PhDs don't get funded just to aid the organisations upon which they focus. I suppose they get funded to support the broader kind of creation and dissemination of useful knowledge in society, and I think maybe that's a marker of the kind of standing of this conversation, or centrality of this conversation to the social enterprise space at the minute, which I suppose maybe underscores the timeliness of today's conversation. I know it wasn't your PhD, so I don't want to kind of put you on the spot to talk us through the technicalities of methodology and things like that, but could you give us a little bit of an overview of how you got to the conclusion that football cooperative delivers value on the social front, on the physiological front, on the the mental health front? What kind of metrics did you use, and what kind of approaches did you use to to measure those things?
Sure, I think obviously at the very beginning of the journey, it's built on the SROI methodology, which is it's a great tool, and I echo Caroline's sentiment that it is one of the best ones to actually start your impact measurement journey on. So one of the first, obviously it sets out principles on how to undertake impact measurement, but one of the first things was stakeholder mapping, and some of the earlier internal mapping we were doing was probably too large. We were thinking like World Health Organization, Department of Health, Department of Sport, etc. The journey we started with the academic team actually circled it down to the 4 we mentioned, the participants, volunteers, community partners, and significant others. So that's a key learning in itself, to kind of start small and kind of don't go thinking you have to network through LinkedIn to find people to actually interview and get data from. A lot of them are readily in front of us. So once the stakeholder mapping was done, there was the next stage of the development of the theory of change that it really informed what were the key pillars and outcomes people experience. So that's, I guess, where focus groups in developing the theory of change, we established that physical, mental and social health benefits are the key outcomes that all of these stakeholders do achieve.
You said something there as well that I think is quite interesting. About starting with those close to you. I think among many social enterprises, the view is almost that they are so close to the beneficiaries with whom they work that they can see very directly the impact that they're having. And in one sense, that is often kind of used as an argument not to engage in formal measurement, but it's also maybe one of the biggest assets that they would have in doing that formal measurement, the proximity that they have to their beneficiaries, the relationships and the ability to capture that kind of information. Kind of talked a little bit about how, maybe a more foundational question actually is why. All right, so this is obviously quite a difficult thing to do. In my own head, I can imagine a couple of pragmatic reasons why you might go to this sort of effort to capture all this data and to build this picture of impact. But it's a question that's open to both of you. Tell us a little bit about why you do invest so much time, so much energy in this process of impact measurement.
To make more money.
To make more money. Simple as that.
Well, we have to show that we're having an impact, and it isn't always clear and it's not obvious. So taking the highest quality approach to it, it does. It helps people be really convinced. I know that anyone that we've worked on an SROI with has gone on to really use it effectively. We were talking to, I was talking to Blue Teapot, an amazing theatre company working with intellectual disability in Galway. And I was talking to them just the other week and they were like, oh my God, we're still using the SROI you did for us. I think it was 10 years ago. And they're still saying, we go internationally and say, look at this. And everyone's like, oh my God, this is such a high quality piece of work because of the amount of pain that your research team, I did a bit of coaching for them, pain that they went through to do it, but they did such a high quality piece of work and they went out and talked to everybody who was what we call in SROI materially affected. So anyone who had any kind of change as a result of the thing, negative or positive. And you have to really shake the tree to see if there are negatives, if there are positives, and you have to speak to everybody in that stakeholder group. So it does take a good bit of energy to do that, but it does pay rewards because people can really see that you've answered the big questions. There's other things that SROI does, like look at dead weight, what would have happened anyway, and attribution, who else was involved. And often by not asking those questions in other evaluations, we're leaving out this huge part of the puzzle. If we're helping people who would have just gone somewhere else and done something, like if you're a gym and you're saying, oh, we make people fitter. Yeah, that's great. But are you a social enterprise? Not really, because you could just go to another gym. So your dead weight, even though people might be getting fitter and stronger, some of your outcomes, they could just go elsewhere. So when I know they looked at the physical thing, they're saying, would you have done this otherwise? And the reason, and then those that would have, you kind of take off that value. So you're kept with the value of these, guys who are getting engaged in this program, and they wouldn't have done it otherwise. And it's that bit there that represents real value and what was shown in your model. So I think that that's really worthwhile. That's why you go that extra bit.
Sure. I echo all of that, and I'd say definitely the first point, the money is definitely like a carrot that I would say we now have developed significant raw material and evidence to go forward to hopefully achieve. Couple of key things for me though would be like validation, first of all. Like when you're running a social enterprise or a program, whether it's a service, a product or an experience, you still want validation that it's actually doing something positive. So that was great, and when we were getting guys to do a beep test, which many guys thought they left behind in like secondary school or maybe never did it before, the fact that they were interested and engaged to do it showed me that they want this project to survive. They want more of it, and if this is what they ask is, they'll do it. So that was great validation, and similar with the online surveys and the data collection. For me, one of the key things is program iteration and development. So like one of the key findings that I find fascinating in the research was that 83% of the participants that were examined within the study had 3 or more cardiovascular risk factors. However, 90% of the participants rated their health as good to excellent, and that kind of overstating their health is acknowledged within men's health research. So we say we're brilliant, but in fact there's actually significant problems underneath and risk factors. So that has taught us that as a social enterprise we need to do more for the men off of the pitch, and that health literacy piece is now a fundamental component of what we do. So we've recently partnered with the Irish Heart Foundation to try and bring in that service to participants, where we kind of bring the Irish Heart Foundation's literacy and knowledge to our participants' door and get them screened and raise awareness of even the knowledge of the risk factors. So for me, I think it's important to do impact measurement for money and for diversifying your fundraising streams, but you have to go back to whatever product, service or experience you're offering as a social enterprise. You continuously need to understand what changes are happening so that it can continually stay present and on point, I guess.
Melise, I appreciate your patience, and I'm conscious you're on the screen behind me. You have quite a different vantage point on this, I suppose. You're not interested only in the social performance of an individual social enterprise. You're interested in the performance of an entire social enterprise sector, within a country or a nation. And I suppose that requires different kind of measurement capabilities at a national level or a policy level. I'm interested in your sense of where Ireland is on this at the moment. I know you did the in-depth policy review, which was launched, I believe, at last year's National Social Enterprise Conference. So you might just talk us through some of your learnings from that.
Yeah, sure, and it's very nice to be among you again. Last year I had the chance to join you in person. I apologize, I can only connect virtually this year, but I see that I'm on a very big screen, so I'm really happy to share a bit the findings from our latest review on Ireland. And indeed, our main goal is at the OECD, is to understand the surrounding framework conditions to support basically social enterprise development in countries, and encouraging impact measurement and monitoring we identify it as one of the key pillars of our recommendation to the countries as well on social economy. We therefore always take it into account whenever we're looking into a country and how the social enterprise ecosystem in that country is doing, which was also the case in Ireland. So one of the first policy conditions that we look at is whether a country already mentions social impact measurement in any of their action plans, strategies, policies, whatnot. And this was already listed in the previous policy in Ireland, but in this new policy, we see that it's even a bit more underlined as the 5th policy objective even, which we always welcome as a very good initiative, because this is, at the policy level, this is a very important signal that impact measurement is something that will be asked for, be it by the policymakers or funders or the general public. So it's a very good addition to policies and strategies to already underline that and to drive policy momentum. And another important aspect of measuring impact is also the availability of data on social enterprises, which is not always the case for a lot of countries. So we really welcome very well the baseline data collection in Ireland. This happens much less rare than you would probably think. A lot of countries have absolutely no data and information about the social enterprise space in their own country. And just knowing how many social enterprises you have, how many people they employ, the different sectors they operate in, is a very important start to understand kind of the scale and reach of your social enterprise space. But then what could happen, for example, for the next exercise of this in Ireland is also to ask about social impact measurement practices. Some countries do that, some countries don't. What we know is that among the social enterprises in Europe, around 58% are saying that they're already measuring their social impact, and then 28% say that they're planning to do it. So there's a relatively low share of enterprises that say this is definitely not in our agenda, or we just don't measure our impact. But it would be nice to see also in the Irish case how prevalent it is among the social enterprises to measure their impact. And it's also important maybe to see using which methods do they do they do the impact measurement through their own methodologies? Do they use other existing frameworks? Do they do it in-house, or do they have to go pay an external consultant to do so, etc.? These are all important things to understand kind of the capacity of social enterprises in undertaking social impact measurement. And since Ireland, we believe, is already advancing on setting the scene at the policy level quite well for an uptake of this impact measurement culture, an important next step is really to look into a clear method and a set of indicators for data collection and analysis, because it's true that a lot of enterprises, they have a social impact which is much more difficult to capture, especially quantitatively. So it's really important to have kind of guidelines or a framework around how to measure, how to communicate, for example, social enterprises' contribution to local cohesion, social inclusion, well-being, etc. But we have already seen, especially at city level, there are some initiatives. I remember the Dublin City Council, for example, they had workshops on measurements already. So now these efforts are very good, but they are also found to be a bit fragmented. So to have them a bit in a more regular manner, a more systematic effort kind of structure would be even better for the social enterprises to kind of understand how to navigate this whole plethora of different practices to measure their impact, and to understand where policy objectives lie, so that they can also target their resources according to that particular social mission. So I'll just stop here and then.
Great, Melise, thanks. And I do want to stick with you and your kind of macro vantage point on this conversation. Because I suppose when we talk about enhancing the quality of social impact measurement, it's very easy to talk to social enterprises and say, you know, you need to do better. But in reality, we kind of have to create the conditions which enable them to do this better. And I suppose we don't only have social enterprises in the room here, we also have funders and other stakeholders. And I know funders have an important role in this space as well. Can you talk a little bit about you know, how funders can maybe support quality impact measurement and some of the pitfalls that they might kind of want to avoid?
Yeah, Sure, we actually looked at this both from the funders or financiers' perspective, but also from the policymaker perspective, because they're sometimes the funders of social enterprises as well. And when we were working on our guide, we had a lot of conversations with social enterprises themselves as well about the challenges they face when they're trying to measure their social impact. And obviously, when there is, especially at the policy level, when social impact measurement is just enforced, let's say to get registered as a social enterprise, etc., without the necessary help around how to do it, it just adds another layer of cost to a social enterprise that is already struggling to access external resources or even have enough manpower to conduct it. So this is something that we say very clearly as a key message in our social impact measurement work. Just do not enforce implementation of social impact measurement without providing, let's say, accessible or affordable capacity building in the first place, or even earmarking budgets for social impact measurements, because we have examples of like outcome-based financing, social impact bonds, etc. And in these examples, we see increasingly more earmarked budgets for social impact measurements. So an enterprise is asked to measure their impact, but they're not asked to also spend money on it to find a way to measure their impact. So already providing the resources for them to be able to conduct this exercise is very important. This also we see it happening more and more in countries, but especially when it comes to earmarking budgets for social impact measurements, we don't have a lot of good examples around it, especially by public authorities. And in the policy guide, we also talk about the importance of also enabling social enterprises to have in-house capacity as well on social impact measurement. I remember there was a case in Belgium, for example, where the government of Wallonia financed social enterprises so that they basically provided funds for social enterprises so they could get capacity building on social impact measurement. So they were able to participate in training of coaches on social impact measurement, etc. So coupling this kind of social impact measurement enforcement with the necessary resources, both human and financial, is very important, and we find that it's usually very, very helpful for enterprises to kind of understand how they can do it in the first place. And then maybe one last challenge I would say for social enterprises is the availability of too many networks, too many frameworks, to measure their impact. And sometimes because these enterprises also have to persuade the funder about their social impact, but when each and every funder has a different reporting framework, or they use different metrics and totally different styles to report on impact, then we find that social enterprises are they get lost in trying to understand which way to adapt their impact reporting. So it's always very important to keep it as simple as possible, as standardized, although it's not as easily done as it's said, to a bit narrow down on the number of different methods of measuring impact. And one last thing is maybe also that the impact measurement is not necessarily only social return on investment measurement. There are many other ways for social enterprises that do not have the capacity to do more complex measurement practices to express their impact, such as through case studies, through other methodologies like the outcome stars, for example, which was developed in the United Kingdom, etc. So there should also be no hierarchy of different practices, because at the end of the day, it's the context and the needs and the capabilities of the social enterprise itself to decide how they can measure their social impact. So this is what I would say based on the previous policy guide we worked on.
Thank you, Melise. And conveniently, I suppose that kind of answers the final question that I had, which was, for social enterprises that are embarking on this journey or eager to begin to measure their social impact or explore their impact a little bit more, that thing of starting simple, of exploring the different approaches that exist out there, examining alignment between the approaches, the work that they do, their capabilities in this area and things like that is an important place to start. I know we're over time here, so for my two panelists here beside me, I'll give you 20 seconds, to maybe package your key takeaways for the audience here in terms of your key learnings or things you would like to share.
20 seconds. Start by asking your end users what change they've experienced and what they most value, and build a theory of change around that, and then start to do bits. Don't do it all at once. I think, as Malia said, you know, SROI is a big deal and it takes a long time. But you can build up to it. You can have a kind of end result, a game plan in mind for what it will look like 4 years in advance, and then you can do pieces of the puzzle. It's at the beginning, understand how it all fits together, and that takes a little bit of kind of support and work, but it's definitely worth it, because then you're adding as you go, and each year you've got more and more of the story to tell, and then at the end, you know, you'll end up with something much more than if it had been an occasional external evaluation. So I would say you have to integrate it into your work, start with a big framework, and then do what you can as you can, integrate it into the day-to-day work. Always coming back to how do we find out what people most want, what they most care about, and then how do we use that information to make better decisions strategically so that we're creating more social impact?
Yeah, I think for us, personally, like I always come back to the best day to plant a tree was 20 years ago. Analogy, the best day to start impact is today. So if people have very low capacity or low effort put into this so far, it is best start today. Key learnings for me would be that, you know, it is about management, impact management, than measurement, because it's a continuous process. You don't just do it and park it in a cupboard in a book. And the real kind of starting point I would put people on is, even if you started just looking at your sign-up forms or whatever way you might engage with your customers or whoever, try to identify the profile and the reach of who you're engaging with. And you can start simply by asking questions about, like, you know, age bands, genders, education levels. Something we learned was you can ask for their air code, and you can plug that into the Pobbles Deprivation Index on their website and get a social economic reading of who your beneficiaries are. And that can break down a lot of stereotypes, and it can inform you as a program lead. And it helps your grant applications. It helps you speak more vividly about who you're serving. So start at the very beginning, understand your target audience through them type of questions, I would say is a crucial part of starting the journey right.
Great. Stephen, Caroline and Melise, really grateful for your insights here. Some really rich stuff, and I'm sure it's a conversation that will continue throughout the day.
Well, thank you so much, Philip, and our panelists. I hope you guys learned a bit more about the world of measuring impact. I know it can be quite scary for a lot of social enterprises to start that work and starting to do a lot of things, because it can be aside from what you actually want to do, but measuring that impact is so essential for you to understand your social target and your social goals, but also scaling your impact and making sure that it's achieving what you actually want it to achieve. So moving on to our last spotlight of the day for a rural social enterprise, I want to invite Ellen Baker of the Cloughjordan Community Farm to come up and speak a bit about their social enterprise and their impact. Elaine, welcome.
Hi, I'm Elaine. I currently volunteer as chair of the board of Cloughjordan Community Farm, but more than being chair of the board, I want to talk to you a bit more about just being a member of Cloughjordan Community Farm and what that means. So Cloughjordan Community Farm is an example of what we call community supported agriculture. So there's 90 adult members and their children who are members of Cloughjordan Community Farm. And I suppose in a practical sense, what that means is being a member means paying a monthly membership fee, and in return you get access to locally grown food. So as a member, I don't buy farm food, like spend a certain amount on a carrot. You know, I go to the farm storeroom, which has a passcode on it, and that members can get into, and I can go and collect my food. If I want some carrots at 4 o'clock in the morning, I can go down the road and collect my food at any time. So that's sort of the practical aspects of being a member of a community supported agriculture scheme like Cloughjordan Community Farm. But then I want to talk about what it means to me personally to be a member of such a type of organisation. So I love eating fresh local food, and I love really knowing where my food has come from. And I like the fact that the people who have grown the food are my neighbours, and that we're closely connected in the same community, and that we support each other in so many ways. I like that I'm close to the biodiversity and the nature in which my food was grown, and that it has been grown in a way that protects and cares for that nature. And I love that I can get some vegetables and herbs from the farm that you just don't find in supermarkets because it's too difficult to transport. So it only works if you can grow it locally and then eat it locally. I feel very connected to the work and the care that goes into growing the food, and this makes me want to make sure that it's not wasted. Because I'm so closely connected to my food, I very much don't want to waste it, and all of us feel the same. So we take what we can eat and no more. We don't take more than we need and then end up throwing it away. We make the best use of the food that we have, and we take a fair share of scarcer items if an item is scarce at a particular time. I really love eating with the seasons and figuring out how to creatively make the most of what is bountiful in a particular season. And I love the fact that when I go and collect my food, I go down normally with my bicycle, and the food is there in crates, and I take it out of the crates and I put it into my bicycle. I bring a few boxes and bags with me sometimes, and there's zero packaging involved in the entire process. There's zero disposable packaging in the entire process, and I like to know that the people in my community who process and preserve my foods, because there are many people who make chutneys and jams and pestos out of the food as well. And the sort of the care and love and the joy that they put into that, and you can really taste and feel that in the food. And I love eating this food together with my community every Tuesday lunchtime. And we have a soup cafe which is organised by, again, my friends and neighbours who are members of the farm, and we get together and we eat some soup from farm food and some locally produced bread together as a community every Tuesday lunchtime, and that means a lot to me as well. So I'm sort of trying to paint a picture of what it means to be a member of community-supported agriculture, and then I also want to say a bit about the sort of food systems that I don't want to be a part of, and the sort of destructive food systems, destructive aspects of food systems. So I don't really want to be part of a food system that has appalling conditions for workers. I don't want to be part of a food system that involves cruelty to animals, food that's grown in sort of dead monoculture soil, in ways that destroy local water systems and the local environment, and also destroy global climate by transporting food all the way around the world. I don't really want ultra-processed food, food that's so processed that it's unrecognisable and very, very unhealthy, and all packed in huge quantities of disposable packaging, which is itself also been produced destructively, transported around the world and then dumped. So that's what I don't want to be part of. So community-supported agriculture is an alternative approach. So what that really means is a closer connection between farmers and eaters. So it's not the farmer producing something for an eater, it's a sort of a closer connection than that, where we share the ups and downs, we share the risks, that maybe something mightn't work out this year, and we also share the bountiful harvests when they come. And we also navigate the joys and also the difficulties sometimes of really working together as a community, and depending on each other for something as fundamental as our food. So what does it mean to us on growth? What does that mean to us? So do we want Cloughjordan Community Farm to take over the world, or expand into new markets and market our stuff elsewhere? No, we don't actually really want to do that at all. What we want is for this model of farming, eating and connecting at a local community level to become the norm rather than the exception. And we want to support other communities to do what we do, but in their own unique way, of course, and learn from each other. You know, we don't want to monopolise anything or maximise profits for profit maximising shareholders. We want to reinvest in our community, and we want to support other growers. The more the merrier in terms how many growers and food processors are in their community. We want more. You know, we don't want to compete with them, and we want to support other communities to also do this in line with our mission. So as well as our core activity, which of course is growing food and managing the membership, that's the sort of the core activity. We have a number of other activities. So we host volunteers from across Europe for a year as part of the European Solidarity Corps scheme, which is a really great scheme. That I recommend that other social enterprises could look that up, because it's really useful, the scheme to be part of. We run the North Tipperary Online Farmers Market, where a range of local farmers, preservers and processors sell their food to local eaters. So it's a way of connecting local eaters and local producers and processors. We run a community education programme called Cuan Bio, which means the Harbour of Life. So this programme is about peer-to-peer support between growers, seed saving and nature education and awareness in the community. And we'd also love to do social farming. We don't do that yet. And then also we co-facilitate the Feeding Ourselves network, which is a network of similar local food and community-supported agriculture initiatives across Ireland. So I suppose we're very happy to get this opportunity to be here today. So what we would like to get out of today, I suppose, firstly, I suppose it's about spreading the word about what community-supported agriculture is. If you can connect with your local farmers, find your local farmers and food processors, maybe help set up community-supported agriculture in your own community, but mostly, eat locally. Look for the local food options, and even when organising events in your social enterprise, maybe try and seek out the local food options that are around you. And that's the first thing. Then the second thing, we'd love to support a number of additional paid roles. So there's, while our core activities, the farmers are paid positions, for our less core activities, we'd love to have be in a position to pay people, because they're currently run entirely through volunteer effort, and in order to expand them, we'd love to be able to pay people, for example, to develop the North Tipperary online farmers market. I should have said we're in North Tipperary, did I not say that? Okay. So our closest big town is Neenah, and we'd love to expand our farmers, our online farmers market into Neenah as well, and employ somebody to actually really develop that out. And we'd love to employ somebody to expand our Cuan Bio education programme and perhaps introduce social farming and improve our educational activities. So that's I suppose the second thing. And then the last thing, we do offer a sort of concessionary membership fee to people who are less able to pay, but we'd love to look into a sort of a sponsored membership program where people who are interested in eating in this way but can't pay the membership fee, or can't pay all the membership fee, would have some sort of a sponsored membership program. So thank you very much for the opportunity to talk about community supported agriculture at this gathering. So thank you to Sari and John for inviting me here today. I'm looking forward to learning from you all. I've already been learning from some of you about what you're doing. It's really, really interesting. And do approach me if you'd like to learn more, or can offer any support. And we'd love to partner with you on our journey of transforming food systems for the better from the bottom up. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Elaine, and thank you so much to the social enterprises that we spotlighted from rural areas. It goes to show the impact that social enterprises are making, not only in the urban cities like Dublin here, but also throughout Ireland, especially in the rural areas. So can we give a round of applause again to all three social enterprises? Awesome. So now, are you guys hungry? Want to eat? Yes, me too. Where there's food, I'm here. So we have food for you. We are going to go on our networking lunch, and I really encourage you all to meet with somebody that you do not know, that you have not met with you. Somebody told me earlier this morning that this is like the Debs of social enterprise, but I really encourage you to meet with someone that you don't know, make that connection, have your lunch. And for those who have dietary requirements, we have catered to you all. So if you want to work your way out, talk to one of the catering staff about your specific dietary requirements. They are going to be there for you. We will be meeting back here at 1:50 to talk more about the workforce development in our next panel. I'll see you all at 1:50. Thank you. Welcome back, everyone. I hope you have all eaten. I hope your bellies have been fed. And I hope you guys are rejuvenated and refreshed for the afternoon that we are going to have. Like I said, I hope you guys have spoken to people that you do not know. You've made some new connections, some new friends, some new colleagues, and potential partners for your social innovation projects and social enterprises going forward. So as we move towards the latter portion of the day, we are going to be having our final panel discussion that's going to be looking at the workforce development for social enterprise. And this session will be focusing again on the workforce development and facilitated by Mairead O'Connor from The Wheel. We'll hear from Siobhan Finn, CEO of the Community Enterprise Association of Ireland, Dara Connolly, CEO of Common Purpose, and Graham Harron, Data and Impact Lead for Grow Remote. Welcome to you all on the stage for this discussion.
Thanks a million, Mamobo, and hello, everybody. The phrase graveyard shift was mentioned earlier, but we'll power through and hope that you are feeling well nourished after your lunch, and we will hopefully give you some more food for thought over the course of the next 30 minutes or so. As Mamobo says, we're going to be looking at workforce development and how that impacts or plays into, I suppose, your social enterprise's success. We're going to have a look at the why, I suppose, why we should be thinking about this, how we can make the most of and be most effective in terms of engaging with workforce development, and some of the benefits as well that our esteemed panel have experienced as part of their own engagement with workforce development. I'm the Skills Development Senior Manager at The Wheel, and just to say we're delighted to have worked with our colleagues in SERI and ISON and the DRCD today in co-organising the event, and it's so wonderful to be in a room with so much buzz, so many great conversations happening on the stage and off, so thanks a million for all your engagement with us today. I have an experienced panel of practitioners, all involved in social enterprises themselves, and we're going to be focusing on their experiences and what that can bring to the conversation. Just to give a small bit of context to this, I suppose, and we've even heard some of it already mentioned this morning in the earlier panels and presentations. The workforce that we're talking about within the social enterprise sector in Ireland has, very helpfully, been defined within the baseline data collection exercise that Ciara Bates referenced this morning. And there are over 84,000 people employed in the sector, and that's about 4% of the labour force overall in Ireland. And there are more than 74,000 volunteers, so a lot of workers, paid and unpaid, in the sector. We, in The Wheel, carried out a research report with Indicon a number of years ago looking at skills and training within the wider sector, and one of the real key outcomes, I suppose, of that was that there is a low level of training in our sector. Workers don't have access to or haven't been able to engage in the level of training and development that they feel they need for themselves, and there are lots of reasons for that, time and cost being the two major barriers. But interestingly enough, Indicon also found that for every €1 that's invested in training and development, you get a return on that investment of €3 in terms of productivity, flexibility, responsiveness, and improvement, if you like, in people's own sense of confidence and worth in work.
We're going to turn now, though, to the panel, and as I say, kind of move through the whys, the wherefores of workforce development. And I'm going to start with Siobhan Finn beside me here. Siobhan is the CEO of the Community Enterprise Association of Ireland. The association provides representation, supports, training, advice and best-in-class insights to the community enterprise sector in Ireland. It's a recognised key stakeholder across the National Hub network and an active and regular contributor to government policy discussions and a respected voice of authority in the community enterprise sector. Siobhan, we've heard it already today, both the work that the DRCD have done in the policy development, the work that the OECD have done in reviewing the social enterprise sector in Ireland, they've identified that skills development is an important sectoral issue and a priority. But from your perspective, from within the sector, from within a social enterprise and working with a network of social enterprises, what do you think is the importance of us having this conversation here today and having skills on the agenda?
So I'm absolutely delighted to be here today because putting skills on the agenda for all of our sectors, I know we talked about subsectors when we were on a call last week, and we're all one sector, but within the sector there are lots of different niches, different types of activities, business models, etc. So we represent enterprise centres and innovation hubs, and I know there's some of you here in the room today. There are about 150 locations around Ireland, and to give you some sense, I suppose, of employee numbers within those centres and hubs vis-a-vis the national statistic, and we've about 500 full-time employees across the sector. So that's tiny by comparison to the number that you've just cited, Mairead. But what's been, I suppose, very interesting for me listening to everybody today is that the challenges that I thought were pretty unique to our sector actually aren't that unique at all, that these are common challenges across all, let's call them subsectors within the wider social enterprise sector. We've seen ourselves, and I suppose we're slightly challenged because we're a small organisation in a really, really busy sector, or in a busy environment, because we've got connected hubs, we've got the National Hub network, we've got a couple of government departments, agencies and all that in there as well, whereas we're a small CLG, almost grappling sometimes to have our voice heard, which is why today is really important for me. But what we are seeing is that the level of demand on the existing skill set of our managers, CEOs and staff is absolutely off the Richter scale. There is no sense of, I would say, reality as to what's expected of these individuals on a day-to-day basis. And as a result, we're seeing significant challenges within our sector, which include staff retention, staff burnout, and Chris and I have talked about this a couple of times in the past, and really just the, I suppose, under-recognition of the valuable contribution of these individuals. The outcome is we're losing people, and we're losing really great people. And to hold on to those people in our sector and across the wider sector, we need to incentivise them to stay. We need to recognise the work they're doing. They need to be upskilled. They need to be empowered to do the jobs they're employed to take on, or they were employed to take on, as opposed to potentially some days wearing the hats of 10 different roles within a single working day, within a single working week. So if we don't address the basic skills needs, the significant skills deficits that exist, and the absolute necessity of upskilling leadership, and help them, really importantly, get out of the trenches and do what they were employed to do, which is be strategic, be visionary, and be the leaders that they were employed to be, then the sector will struggle to survive and will always fight a battle when it comes to having its voice heard. I was very encouraged today by what Ciara Bates from the department had to say. It's the first time I've sat in a room and heard such a comprehensive, I suppose, approach to what the social enterprise sector looks like and what it stands for, and the potential of what it can deliver at a national, regional and community level. But to make that happen, skills has to be right at the top of our agenda. And for me, what I would say is, because we are one small organisation within a busy sector and within a much busier sector when we step out of social enterprise and into the world of enterprise centres and hubs. We're a niche organisation. There are an awful lot of niche organisations out there, and to have real impact, we need to work together. So operating in silos and sub-silos isn't going to achieve what we need to achieve.
Great. Thanks, Siobhan. Powerful words. I think you've covered a lot of territory there, but I imagine there's a lot of people who can recognise the situation that your members are in, who are sitting in the room today. Graham, at the other end of the panel, I'm going to come to you next, just to keep everybody on their toes. Graham Harron is the Impact and Data Lead at Grow Remote. Grow Remote is a social enterprise in Ireland dedicated to solving the problems of remote work in order to unlock positive social, economic and environmental change for individuals, employers and communities. Through the efforts of their team, partners and volunteer community, they are not only reshaping the future of work in Ireland, but also strengthening local communities and fostering more inclusive, sustainable and thriving workplaces. And I suppose that's why we're here today talking to you, Graham. I suppose from that strategic viewpoint, and you're working with organisations across many different sectors, not just within our social enterprise sector, but beyond as well. And you're often delivering training and upskilling and advising on workplace developments. What do you see as the business case for engaging in workforce development?
So Siobhan has given us some really good context there and used a couple of really strong words, and one of them was survival. So I'd also like to add just an extra bit of context around that for social enterprises, and recognise that every social enterprise and every individual within it is operating in a really, really complex environment. It's about balancing financial sustainability plus that desire to deliver on impact goals. So, you know, social enterprises are tackling big, complex social challenges. So even from that very core perspective, how can it not require a huge amount of diverse skill sets? It requires skill sets that we would consider perhaps as industry standards. So bringing those in and attracting them, that's hard. But then when you look at the complex solutions that are being layered on top of that, you also need a really unique and diverse set of skill sets. So it's, first of all, it's really, really complex to do that. And because of that, I would just stick a marker in the sand now and say that, again, building on that point of survival, workforce skill development in the sector is not a nice to have or a strategic initiative that's about let's push the business or the organisation or our people that 1% forward. It's absolutely essential to survive. And if we don't survive and grow as a sector, impact doesn't get delivered. And it's therefore communities and individuals and what we all talk about now, great to see the conversation rising, social value impact. It's all about change for people. If we don't invest in workforce skill development, change doesn't happen at a people level within our local communities. I appreciate I have to answer the question as well and talk about a few specifics. So through our work at Grow Remote, again, it is across multi-sectors, but we are fortunate to have delivered training, thanks to a lot of support from people in the room, to social enterprises. And there's specific pieces there that we want to focus on. And three things would be improved efficiency and productivity. And that's about allowing social enterprises to either create more money or save money, again, trading for impact. The second piece would be about attracting and retention of talent. So the sector, inside the sector, we know it's challenging, but externally, individuals know the sector's challenging as well. Now, if you don't go front and brand yourselves as an organisation or a sector as one that's investing in the future of work and talent and upskilling work, it's going to be even harder to attract people to come into the business or the organisation to drive impact and get the skills that you need. There's also a piece around there that if you're not attracting talent, you're not bringing in the skills that you need to innovate. And my goodness, social enterprises are constantly having to innovate. So it's not just about bringing the right people in, it's about bringing the skills as well. And then finally, again, through our own lens, it's about preparing for the future of work. And the future of work is not just about where work's done, and I'll hopefully get a chance to speak about this, but it's how work is done. And that's an incredibly new skill set that is being brought in. It's just a constant layer from policy to individuals. Social enterprises are constantly tasked with change, and the only way to address that and stay ahead is skill development. So you brought up in the introduction the Indicon investigation and analysis that was done. Investing €1 to create a return of quality and improvement impact of ratio of 1 to 3, that honestly sounds like a really solid starting point for the business case to me.
Thanks, Graham. Lots to jump off there again. And I'll bring Dara in now as our final contributor. Dara Connolly is the CEO of Common Purpose. As a leadership development organisation and social enterprise, Common Purpose delivers experiential leadership programmes for individuals and organisations who want to make a difference in their worlds and the world around them. Sounds like the people we have in the audience today. Common Purpose is on a mission to develop people who can cross cultural, institutional and social boundaries at work and in wider society. And Dara, I think Siobhan has mentioned the people and has really kind of zoned in on the people in the organisations. Graham has mentioned it as well. You know, I guess we're a people-focused sector. We talk a lot about people, but we don't always prioritise the people in the organisation. We're very focused on the communities, on the service. What are the risks to us and to the sector if we leave that down the list of priorities?
Okay. First of all, the two speakers, Siobhan, it was perfect points, nearly all the points covered already, but you're talking about people. And this industry, this sector is driven by people. It survives on people because we don't have the resources, you know, the infrastructure underneath us. So those people have to be supported. Common Purpose is a social enterprise and a self-funded social enterprise. We'd love some funding, by the way. And it is about connecting those people to support each other. And in creating those mentors, if you want, that actually will be in the room, that will actually go, you've gone through this challenge, I'm just about to start this challenge, can I just plagiarize what you've done and cross-pollinate what you do? So, but if you do that cross-sectorally, and if you actually bring people into the room, the not-for-profit, the social enterprises, the public sector and the corporate sector, and if you bring them into the room and actually remove the table in the middle as such, that negotiating table, that collaboration, that partnership, that connection can be hugely powerful. And it's about creating that trust and that knowledge of the other individuals, because organizations are run by individuals. And this whole classic, and it was really funny walking in here today. It's like a family reunion, right? Knew so many people. I've been in this sector, been in Common Purpose for 5.5 years, but I've been working in social enterprise for about 15. And I absolutely know how tough it is. People are driven to the wall all the time. So you talk about risk. The major risk is people collapsing and not being able to do the job. So, and it is very much, sometimes, especially the small ones, are driven by 1, 2, or 3 different individuals. If they are not supported, the whole thing collapses, like a house of cards. So to support them is actually to bring the individuals that are on the same, that peer level piece, for them to actually, to work together, to create that trust, to create that mentor model, as I say. So if you can do that, then the collaborations can come out. And again, I'll talk about the cross-sectoral piece. Being able to be in a room, on a program, working with people, and them getting to know you as an individual rather than the organization. You're not bidding them, you're not plugging them. Not plugging them like I'm plugging my organization now. So create that trust, and then those collaborations, those partnerships, those connections that will actually support the leaders going forward. So the risk is about people, and if those people are supported, yeah, things happen.
Great, thanks, Dara. I suppose people here today are keen to hear of good examples, a bit of practical experience. What can we do to actually get this on the agenda? What can we do to drive the skills agenda in our own organisations? Siobhan, you've done a lot of work in the association, in CEAI, on skills and trying to put it on I suppose the agenda and with members. What have you done? What practical steps have you done to get that conversation going?
So back in 2021, and our organisation, while it's been around as a voluntary network for a number of decades at this stage, we're only registered as a CLG since 2019. We got our first tranche of funding in 2020. So, we can be termed a start-up in another sense. And I started in this role in 2021. And there was one particular project that the organisation had been funded to deliver for government, and we were working on that project. But as we were going through the consultation process with the sector, and bearing in mind we were in the middle of the third lockdown, and people working from home, there were stresses coming from a lot of different angles. And the sector itself, our sector, had seen massive flux and change in that year and a half. And what became really apparent to me because I couldn't go out and meet anybody, we were all, either confined to an office or sitting at our kitchen table. What became really apparent to me was the level of stress that individuals were under, and the lack of self-confidence that they had in adapting to a new world, with lack of resource, lack of finance, and trying to keep the day job going and the front doors open of the centre as well. So it led me to a conversation with the team in Skillnet Ireland, and I explained my story, and I don't know who said, somebody said earlier about not begging anymore. I'm sure I wrote it down, but not on the set of notes, but I thought it was really good. I seem to spend my time begging, looking for funding, looking for support, but this was in the very early days. And I went to the team in Skillnet Ireland. It was just a cold reach out, and explained my story, and I said, we really need to do something about these people. How can you help us? So they put the Mentors Work programme in front of us, and this isn't the kind of thing Skillnet Ireland do on a day-to-day basis. Their focus is very much on the large corporate, the big employers, driving innovation, upskilling Ireland's workforce is how they describe it. But by the way, we're all Ireland's workforce as well, which doesn't seem to be recognised in the bigger picture. But fortunately, I met the right people on the right call. They made Mentors Work available to us, which is a really nice management development programme, quite generic in its approach, but can be adapted on an individual basis based on their needs. So we put about 50% of our hubs and community enterprise centres through that programme. It was entirely self-voluntary or self-subscribed. They were under no pressure to join up, but they did, and a number of them went back and did the programme 2 and 3 times, and it brought significant benefits. And I think what it created was that kind of collegial approach for staff who felt incredibly isolated during a very difficult time. And I love telling this story, so sorry if I'm being a little bit verbose about it, but it was such an insightful, I suppose, experience for me, because it was the first time I'd gone out and asked for something for nothing, and really didn't expect that I would get the level of support that I got. So it was really, really incredible. But what it did for us then, that was a short-term fix. But what became really apparent then, as I got to know the role and I got to know the sector, and I said to my chairperson one day, this isn't actually about the buildings at all, this is about the people. And I felt really stupid when I said it, because it had taken me a little bit of time to figure it out, but everybody's saying today, this is about the people. So we went back to Skillnet Ireland to secure additional funding, and we had wonderful partners in One Drogheda Skillnet who fronted the application for us. And the focus was on workforce development and building resilient businesses in the regions. So we undertook, when I say we contracted the work out to a team of experts, and we undertook an exercise that probably lasted close to 12 months. And what has come out of it is a really excellent career and competency framework for our sector. And this is where I look for funding, because what we have is entirely transferable across the entire sector. Yes, there are specific skills required within subsectors across the whole social enterprise sector, but the baseline skills and competencies that are needed are applicable right across the entire sector. So we did a whole lot of research, primary research, desk research, pulled together a really extensive body of work, which I've shared with some of Mairead's colleagues in the Wheel in the last week or so. And we covered everything from what's nice to have, what we have to have, leading self, leading others, leading the organisation, and so much more. I'm conscious that I'm taking up a lot of time, so I'd stop now. very happy to talk to any of you about it, certainly very happy to talk to government about it. We presented it to Minister Collins of DEFRIS back in April. There were about 10 different stakeholder organisations in the room, and every single one of them agreed that this is transferable. This can be used for the entirety of the sector, with the right people at the table, with the stakeholders supporting it, and with the funders in place. So that's my ask.
Thanks, Siobhan. Well, there's an offer as well in there, so grab Siobhan if you want to find out more about that initiative and the skills framework. I suppose, Graham, you mentioned earlier about the way we work and the skills changing. What are you seeing or what are you hearing from your clients in terms of the skill needs, and what do you think the people in the room here need to keep in mind in terms of the future way of working and remote work, I suppose?
So just to perhaps frame some thoughts on that as well. The policy Trading for Impact. So we do trade for impact, and the trading that we do is providing training services. One of the training programs is called Leading Remote and Hybrid Teams. And again, there's perhaps individuals in the room that have taken part in that training. So I'm going to draw on the feedback from that training and testimonials that really draw out from the dozens of social enterprises and hundreds of social enterprise learners that have went through it, to try and put a box around a few skills that are essential, because we've highlighted and talked that there's a wide skill set required. So it would take too long to kind of do that. But also a disclaimer that when we talk about skills development needs, it's not saying that those skills don't exist within individuals or talent. It's not that they're missing. It's about bringing those skills up to a consistent level across the sector, or bringing in new ones that are constantly needed because the sector's innovating. That's a disclaimer. But three kind of key skill sets to draw out. The first one is around, again, not where we work, it's about how we work. So digital communication and collaboration is becoming a much bigger part of how every organisation works, regardless of location. So within our training program, one of the pieces that gets the most excitement and the attention is that session around digital tools and how to bring a tech stack into your social enterprise. So digital skills have evolved far beyond. You're not digitally savvy anymore if you can jump on a Zoom's team and Zoom's call or use Microsoft Teams. Being digital savvy, collaborating and communicating is about tech stack. There's new tools that are in there. So that could be things like Notion for knowledge sharing, Loom for reducing time spent connecting with each other and sharing information internally, or mural boards for collaborating and innovation and solving problems. So again, regardless of location, digital tools and collaboration is a really important skill set that will help us all operate more effectively and efficiently. The second one that I will draw out is based on a few points that were made in the morning sessions, and it's about, and also talking in the room, which is one of these really valuable pieces about being here. So well done for creating networking spaces so that we can connect and learn from each other. So that second point is it's about leadership and performance management. And we sometimes do a lot of work to separate that a social enterprise needs to operate as an organization, and it needs to then drive impact. But thinking as an organization that needs to trade, leadership and performance management is a key part of that. Regardless of your working model, again, whether it's remote, hybrid or on-site, bringing skill sets that help leaders manage themselves, manage their teams and manage their performance is only going to be a really strong thing for driving impact. Making sure the business and the organization is running a tight ship and delivering impact is very important, and that's a skill that can always be lifted. And as people are changing, it needs constantly refreshed. And the third point is, again, from this morning's sessions, again, amazing to hear the conversation about measuring impact and social value. These are all new concepts. They're not new concepts in a wider sense, but bringing them into social enterprise and really surfacing them up, this is another thing that needs a new skill set. So we need to educate ourselves and work with the people that are here, Caroline, Quality Matters, Social Value Ireland, all of the experts out there. We need to bring those skill sets in-house so that we can understand, create capacity, and not add to the pressures that are already here in social enterprise, because there's enough. Only through the skill development of bringing data in and using it much stronger within the organization, data-led, data-driven impact, data-driven decisions, it will ease some of those pressures that do exist. So just to recap, the 3 skills: digital communication and collaboration, leadership and performance management, and data and impact measurement, I think, will be 3 key skills for the continued success and evolution of the social enterprise sector.
Thanks, Graham. That's a great summary, and I think lots for people to take away. We're coming close to the end of our time together. Dara, I wanted to just come to you on that point. Graham was talking quite a bit there about the technical skills, but I know from your perspective, bringing people together in a room for training, we put it in inverted commas, has a lot more to it, you know, in terms of the benefits.
The biggest piece is time to think. Giving yourself some space to actually to grow, to connect with people, to hear things that are new. Again, that cross-pollination piece is absolutely integral to what we do, and what other training programs do. There's technical skills that have to be taken up, but those people, they can have all the technical skills they need if they're not actually being supported and being able to do the job, building up that resilience, building up that awareness, that openness, that level of influence, being able to influence people. These are all absolutely integral competencies, no matter what industry you're in, as Siobhan talked about. So giving yourself that time to think is absolutely key. Being able to connect with people that are our peers, that may have actually gone through a challenge that you are just facing into. Or else you can actually put your brains together and actually come up with a solution together. So that is, you know, these are the offshoots of training. We don't call it a training, we call it a program, and we call it experiential. So it is about the experience of the individuals that we bring together, that we curate the groups, the cross-sectoral group, but also it's actually the individuals that come in, but also the places you go to. So if you actually go out, and we're all here today, I'm hoping people have had an opportunity to think, connect with the people beside you, actually to be able to grow and leave here just a little bit topped up. That's integral to training.
Just in that final minute, I'll borrow Chris's methodology and give you 20 seconds to say your final piece to the leaders in the room here. What's their next first step when they leave today if they want to prioritise workforce development? What's your piece of advice? I'll start with you, Graham. Come back the way.
I think understand the context that you operate in an incredibly complex and challenging environment. Be very intentional about investing in upskilling. Social enterprises are not good at that. Amazing at everything else, but not good at investing in workforce and skill development. And embrace the future of work, regardless of location, to increase productivity and create more diverse and inclusive workplaces across Ireland.
Okay, there's never the perfect time to take the time out. Everybody in the sector is driven to the wall, working at 100%, 10 hours a day, what have you, possibly more. There's never the perfect time. Create the time, invest in yourself, invest in your staff. They will stay with you if you invest in them, and it will benefit your business.
Thanks, Dara. Siobhan? 20 seconds.
20 seconds. Now you put me on the spot, Mairead. 20 seconds. Core funding. Please recognise the importance of core funding for this sector. We do great things for the communities we exist in, the communities we work in, the communities we support. Every single organisation I've talked to here today is crying out for core funding to support people like us do what we want to do for the sector and on behalf of the sector.
Great, thank you. on that then, I might just give a little note of hopefully good news in terms of some funding around workforce development. There was a positive I suppose, piece that came as a result of Budget 2025. We have an uplift for the Community and Voluntary Sector National Training Fund budget line of €800,000 for employer-led initiatives. And we're working with the Department of Further and Higher Education and our partners at the moment in order to figure out the rollout plan for that for the benefit of the sector. But one thing I can tell you today here is that there will be a new Training Links scheme launching on the 2nd of December, and as a result of the uplift, what we're hoping to provide is the largest ever Training Links fund round, and it will, we hope, double the funding available to organisations through that scheme this year. So that's hopefully some place that you can maybe take the inspiration that you've heard today, and there will be information about that disseminated over the next couple of weeks, so keep an eye out for that. And with that, I'd just like to thank our panellists and thank you for your attention, and I look forward to the rest of the session. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mairead, and our panellists. I know a lot of us who are in this sector and in this space are really driven by our passion for positive social change. But like as we spoke in the panel today, the importance of maintaining that impact and maintaining that change and moving forward in that change is really driven by the workforce and the people that are in the organizations, and developing that talent is hugely essential as we move forward in our sector. So now we're going to be going a bit deeper, and we're going to be going in our breakout rooms and breakout sessions for you to have discussions and for us to go a bit deeper into specific topics that we would like to go into. And we have 3 sessions that we have today, and they're going to be in 3 different locations. So I'm just going to explain to you the locations that we have for you to go into more deeper. So the first breakout session is going to be around social procurement and ESG, facilitated by Chris Gordon, which will be taking place in the Courtyard Room. Mind you, there's only going to be 40 seats there, so get there quick. If not, we're going to be having a debrief session here after the breakout session is going to be happening. The second breakout session is going to be on climate action and social enterprise, which is facilitated by Chris Mooney-Brown, which is going to be taking place here at the main stage. And then the last breakout session is going to be taking place in the Puddle Room, I believe it's called. It's going to be 80 seats there, and that session is on leveraging social finance, facilitated by Garrett O'Donoghue. The sessions will be lasting roughly 30 minutes long, and I advise you, if you're going to a session that's outside the main stage, to go outside, and there'll be someone there to sort of guide you into each of the breakout rooms there. So we will be meeting back around 3 o'clock, so I really suggest you soak in as much knowledge as you can in those sessions, and we will all debrief together. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, everybody. We'll get started so that we've got plenty of time to chat. So during this breakout then on climate action and social enterprise, we're going to be providing insight into the role played by social enterprises in delivering on Ireland's overall climate efforts. So what we're going to try and do broadly during this session is discuss a few key themes. So firstly, we're going to look at the work that social enterprises are currently doing to advance climate goals. We're going to look then at how social enterprises can begin to introduce sustainable practice and climate-friendly activities into their work. So if any of you are in that position, hopefully that you'll get a few useful pointers here. And then finally, how those efforts can empower local communities to respond meaningfully to climate and sustainability priorities. So that's what we're going to try and cover off today. It's going to be quite a whistle-stop tour through all of these points. Then we're also going to try and give some thought to the role of government support and policy measures in all of this, in enabling social enterprises to continue playing a leading role in climate action. So I'm very, very pleased and honoured to be presenting today alongside 3 inspirational and brilliant people, leaders in the social enterprise sector. You are all. I take my hats off to you. So we have Claire Downey from the Rediscovery Centre
Jenny Williams from Habitat for Humanity Ireland, and Martina Harrigan from Roscommon Women's Network. So, thank you to all. So, straight into the first question. Firstly, partly as a way of introducing us to your organisation's work, maybe if I could ask each of you to describe what climate action means to you and your organisation on a day-to-day basis. If we come to you first, Claire, please.
Sure thing, no problem. It's nice to see some familiar faces in the audience too. So I work, as you said, at the Rediscovery Centre. We're the National Centre for Circular Economy, and climate action is inherently part of what we do, as for my fellow speakers here. We're aiming to lead the transition to a more circular economy, and that means moving away from our current patterns of consumption, of extracting resources and processing those resources and distributing them around the world, and then using them and throwing them away and going through that cycle again. And we know that that cycle of consumption is responsible for about 45% of greenhouse gas emissions globally. So there's a really strong link between circular economy, or moving away from a linear economy, and moving away from consumption towards this area. So at the Rediscovery Centre, how we try and lead that transition, as I said, we actually started 20 years ago. So this is a 20-year anniversary, so we've managed to keep going for that long, which is fantastic. Started out as a real community grassroots project, and we're now able to offer national services around education, so talking to young people from primary age right up to adults through vocational training. We have a demonstration facility in Ballymun, and you're all very welcome to come and visit. It shows how you can practice reuse, repair, prevention right throughout the organisation, workshops and reuse and repair, through collaborating with others and through policy advocacy. And we're able to reach about 30,000 people a year and save around 47 tonnes of carbon a year, but the impact hopefully is much wider than that as well.
I'm Jenny Williams. I have the privilege to lead Habitat's work in Ireland, and I suppose it was Habitat's global vision of a world where everybody has a decent place to live, which led to the development of Habitat Restore, which was launched first of all in Lisburn in the north, just over, in fact, 13 years ago next week. And Restore directly tackles poverty and addresses many of the SDGs by helping local people access low-cost material to improve their home. And that's where the sustainability and circularity comes in, because everything that we sell in Restore is donated either by local people in the communities around each store, or by companies in an effort to help them deliver on their ESG or CSR targets. We have 5 Restores in the north. We have only 1 in the Republic, but that's soon going to change. So 1 in Drogheda, although somebody did tell me not that long ago that that was very northerly. But anyway, that's another story. And we are about to launch our 6th in the north in Derry. So the impact that we seek is for people, it's for communities, and it's for the planet. And I think one of the advantages of a social enterprise is that all those things are so effectively linked together, and that's what delivers the impact. So.
Thank you, Jenny. And Martina?
Yeah, so I'm the Progression and Skills Coordinator with Cycle Up Textiles, which is a project by a social enterprise by Roscommon Women's Network. And Roscommon Women's Network is a community development project in Roscommon, and it particularly engages with women from marginalised and disadvantaged backgrounds, including those who, I suppose, experience isolation, being a very rural county. We strive to meet women where they are at and try and get projects going from a grassroots level. And we're driven by consulting with those women and finding out, you know, where their issues are and what we can do to maybe try and make an impact there. Our current strategic policy, which is actually finishing up this year, was 2019 to 2024, listed 4 strategic policies. And one of those policies was to protect the environment. And this policy came about, as I said, with consultation with women, where we went around and met women's groups,
women from marginalised and disadvantaged groups in particular, and we asked them what their issues were at the time. And we were extremely surprised back then, way back in 2017, 2018, where the climate emergency wasn't really part of that conversation, where women were actually raising this issue as something that was really bothering them. And they were feeling very, very overwhelmed and feeling it was an overall issue that they couldn't do a hell of a lot about at the time. But they wanted this on the RWN strategic policy. So it did, and it's set on our policy. So anytime we, I suppose, were looking for projects, we would strive to look at projects that could involve climate actions at the time. And that essentially is how Cycle Up Textiles has come about. It's a social enterprise that trains people in how to upcycle textiles. And as a result of that, we've grown to a point now where we produce upcycled textiles for sale and also deliver training courses around the county and regionally as well.
So, and then to help us give a sense of the wider context as well, let's explore now what is what's unique about the ways that social enterprises drive climate action. How would you say that uniqueness involves or empowers the communities that social enterprises serve?
Well, I think what's really special about social enterprises is that they're obviously mission-driven, that they have that mix of traded income but also funding. But also, as Martina said, they're really about identifying where are the needs, where are the gaps, and filling those gaps and tackling, as an earlier speaker said, the big challenges, which climate action obviously is. So they're in that really kind of unique position to address all of those areas, and particularly in reuse and repair. We know social enterprises are pioneers and they do tackle those big challenges, and they've always been out pushing new innovations. I know Una is here in the audience from Recycle IT and was always pointing out that social enterprises are the innovators in this space. They are driving change, and that's because of the funding model a little bit, but also because they're dynamic and they're mission driven. They're, the ones leading, home, furnishings and equipment from the kind of surplus area, the upcycling textiles, the food redistribution, or in our case, the demonstration activities. They're out leading all of this. They're also practitioners. So in terms of reuse, we know from studies that half of all of the second-hand operators in the country are social enterprises. And they're driving green skills. And I know we've heard a lot about skills, but green skills in particular, there are thousands of people involved in this sector in Ireland, 120,000 people involved in the sector across Europe from reuse membership alone. So, they're across those three really important areas: innovation, practice, and green skills.
And would you agree?
Absolutely. Yeah, I love to tell the story of how the genesis of Cycle Up came about, because it was driven by our volunteers in our charity shop. And they started asking the question, very simple question, every charity shop would have to answer this, is what happens to the clothes and textiles that don't sell? And they were the people who were dealing with, these products coming in, wondering what they do with them, restoring them, what happens to them. And they really wanted to do something, make an impact. And these volunteers who work with us are some of those people that are marginalised and disadvantaged. And it is a concern for them. And from that, based on that, we set up a pilot project, and just to see what we could do with training those women in how to upcycle textiles. And it all came about small pots of funding here and there. At the time we set up the pilot training project, we got LA21 from the local county council. We got a small amount of money from Dennis Naughton, who was the Minister for the Environment at the time. We got Patagonia funded us for a little bit, that clothing brand. And that allowed us to just develop out a pilot training project. You had these women who were volunteering in the shop, getting these brand new skills for them that they feel they could make an impact on. And then that grew from that. We got EPA funding, we got Rethink Ireland funding. Just this constant growth, but always driven by those women that were volunteering with us at the time. And we still have some of them with us. And some of those women now have jobs, flexible paid employment in a rural county with skills that they never thought were on their, I suppose, grand plan of things, but has really given them huge opportunity. So for us, you know, a social enterprise can do that in such a real viable and tangible way.
Yeah, connecting those two
Yeah.
priorities, and I think that's kind of taking us into that another sort of aspect that social enterprises have in focusing these kind of grand ideas of climate ambition, and which is often talked about in sort of, you know, national or even global terms, focusing that down into specific, tangible, achievable activities and actions. So how have you seen social enterprises translate large, sometimes, you know, perhaps quite nebulous ideas? How have they translated those into specific and meaningful climate action on the ground on a day-to-day basis? What kind of examples have you seen, perhaps?
I think as a social enterprise, you need to be able to do both things. So I think when you're talking to funders or potential corporate partners, you've got to know about the big things and the policy, and you've got to be able to talk about those things. You've got to be able to talk about the Sustainable Development Goals, but you've also got to be able to make it simple for local people to feel that we can make it easy for them to do good things. I'm convinced that people want to do good things if we make it easy for them. And I was thinking about this, you know, the reality is that, you know, too many people in Ireland can't afford to heat or eat. So many of those people can't afford to improve their home. And we're making it easy for them to improve their home. We're making it easy for them to be reusers. And yet people who shop in Restore, I mean, at least 40%. So we served 120,000 customers last year, and at least 40% are from deprived communities, and the rest are environmental champions or bargain hunting, everybody like me. And at the same time, I don't know whether any of you watch Heated, but we were delighted to be on Heated a couple of weeks ago, so if you haven't seen it, go back and have a look. But we had a couple from Malahide who had decided we do a kitchen rescue scheme, where we go and take out a kitchen and rescue it for reuse. And they were so pleased. They'd never heard of Restore before. They'd never heard of anybody who would rescue their kitchen. And they were so delighted. And they were delighted to be on TV. And, you know, you saw them unpacking their kitchen. And we were able to take that kitchen back. That's been resold. And I suppose it's that really, actually, as I watched them on the programme, when I looked at this question, I was thinking, they are the people who, we made it easy for them. We make it easy for companies to give us things that they no longer need. And we make it easy for individuals who live in the communities where each Restore is to give us stuff. We have a van on the road all the time, we'll go and collect it, but also people will come and deliver stuff. And I'm really convinced that then, when people see the impact, they see that we're training volunteers in store, they see that people are getting employment, they see both socially and environmentally, and I think those things coming together are I suppose, is what is the magic of social enterprise.
So I'm hearing there's a little bit of problem solving, but there's also a bit of enabling and empowering as well going on there, isn't there? Yeah. Okay, so I think we've heard quite a lot. We had the panel discussion this morning about impact measurement, so I don't want to cover that off in too much detail, but we've spoken previously about how each of you are kind of collecting data and evidencing what you do. And Claire, there was something that we've spoken about that's kind of adds to this discussion we had this morning. So that point about communicating and evidencing your environmental efforts to your customers, to your stakeholders, what else have you do you see alongside the numbers? What would you say is also important to that communicating?
Yeah, we communicate at all levels, and we've been doing some research. We're trying to develop a national platform for circular economy, a place people can find out more about this area. And in doing some research into, do people actually know what that means? You know, circular economy, is it resonating? Because we talk about it all the time in our area, but, you know, we're sometimes in a bubble. We've found that actually only around 50% of people even recognize the term, and then the understanding is lower again. So it's really important to think in these communications about language, and, you know, maybe circular economy doesn't work for people, but certainly repair does, and that instantly resonates, and it's a really practical action, as you were saying, Jenny, that people can really kind of grasp immediately. And we've talked about climate action not working in some areas too, and we're collaborating on a project with communities to help them start new reuse and repair activities. And that is all about reuse, concrete actions, reuse, repair, food waste prevention, things that resonate and make sense to people. And we never say circular economy, and we never say climate action. Not that it's a bad thing, and it works for some people, but if you talk about skills and you talk about, you know, things you can do in your community, it has much more resonance with people.
Way more impact. It's funny, and it's only when you start to engage with communities, you see that they're just, there's almost a shutdown when you start using words like circular economy, climate action. If you, I think, break it down and go down to it's that grassroots kind of language again. It's just like repair, you know, swap shop. It's, everyone gets it. It's so much easier to grasp, and it's tangible. It's like, I can do that. It's that can-do attitude. Whereas all this terminology, it seems like that's government level stuff. And I think that's our job, isn't it? To bring it down to bite-size actions.
We had 4 schools in Restore Drogheda yesterday, because it's European Week of Waste Reduction, in case you didn't know. You probably knew more than me. But anyway, these 4 schools were repurposing tiles into coasters. And, you know, again, local companies were giving the tiles away. The kids were able to make these coasters, take them home to their parents. And actually, what I love about school kids is that they are the best advocates for climate justice. So they're away home with their coaster and their leaflet about Restore, and hopefully their parents will then begin to reuse. So that's, you know, it's as you keeping it at its simplest language.
It's really about what you were saying earlier, Martina, about meeting people where they're at.
Yeah.
Because if you do that, you'll end up using the language that they're using, rather than your own or what the government is.
Yeah.
The government language. Yeah. Let's look at challenges now. So, what challenges that you've experienced yourself? Tell me about any challenges you've experienced or that you've seen in the social enterprise sector, where you or colleagues have attempted to introduce or to upscale climate action. Where do you start?
I'll touch on 2, but I'm sure you'll have a lot more to say on these. The first one is, when you're talking about scaling, it's having capacity within an organization to build on. So that means having core, I suppose, your core activities funded or supported through earned income, and building on that to be able to extend to new areas. And that is always a challenge, I think, in any business, but especially in social enterprise. And the other area, I think, is that for circular economy, I'm kind of reluctant to use that term now for this space. It is becoming busier. We are starting to see, you know, we're seeing a lot of funding, a lot of new entrants come into the area, which is absolutely necessary and absolutely great. And as it becomes more viable, we'll also see businesses moving into this area, which is also important. We're sort of doing ourselves out of that necessity to be there to fill a gap. But I think it will be important to look at how social enterprise should continue to play a role in the space of driving things forward, so that it does genuinely progress instead of kind of moving at a glacial pace that sometimes can happen.
I think that capacity is always an issue, and that balance between, as you begin to scale, having the capacity and the partner at the right time. and we are delighted to share that we have secured Rethink Ireland funding, and we will be able to scale Restore to 3 more communities in the Republic in the next 3 years, and that's really, really exciting. But it's also a challenge because we need to find 3 suitable buildings so that are 10,000 square feet, and this is for you all, so I expect you to contact me next week to tell me where this building is. You know, we need to find 10,000 square feet. You know, it needs to be where there's deprivation, it needs to be with a good road network, and we would go anywhere, you know, but that's really exciting, but it's also a challenge. I have been looking in Dublin for the last 5 years and haven't managed to secure anywhere so far. That's how we ended up in Drogheda. So it's both exciting and a challenge. And I think for me, one of the other challenges is that there are so many different organisations in our network, in our sector, that we really need to be engaged with if we are to deliver well the impact that we want to deliver. And I find that particularly difficult, and maybe it's just about capacity as well, but you know, finding out who is the right person to talk to when there are so many different organisations that we should be engaged with. And part of that's a little bit because we're north and south, you know, but there's Community Resource Network Ireland, who are amazing, and but there's also then there became NIRN, even though there wasn't in the beginning. There's Social Enterprise Northern Ireland, Social Enterprise RI, there's all of those different people, and I think some way to streamline and simplify and create an opportunity to easily navigate, especially for somebody like me who doesn't know enough about it. So those are 2 challenges, and I'm handing over the buildings one to you.
Any additional challenges that you see, Martina?
Similar challenges, and I suppose for us on our journey, what we found difficult at the time was sustainable funding. We're very, I suppose just in the last year or 2, we've managed to get that. We've managed to get it through DRCD, we've got Community Services Programme funding, and we also got EU Just Transition funding as well. But that journey up to that point was quite difficult, and you know, it was touch and go at times as to whether we would be able to sustain what we had. We had only 1 paid part-time member of staff, a huge amount of, I suppose, a goodwill in terms of volunteers coming to us. We were lucky, actually, we had the Community Employments Programme as well, that we could train people actually through that project. And I think retention of staff and attracting talent as well, especially in those leadership roles, which are key, and I know that was spoken about in the last panel as well, that those leaders have to wear so many hats, and it's trying to retain and hold on to them with probably salaries that, let's be fair, are probably uncompetitive in comparison to the rest of the sector.
We need to wrap it up, but I just want to give you 20 seconds just to do a bit of future forecasting. What government supports and policy do we need to have in place to address those challenges, would you say? A 20-second ask to government.
I think it would be useful to have a full overview of all of the different subsidies, supports, taxes affecting our area, and be able to take a more holistic approach to what's going to be most effective to drive it forward. That's not a kind of complete answer, but I think it needs more work because we're putting lots of little sticky plasters over things like VAT and like this and like vouchers and this and that. And I think we need to have a much more holistic approach.
Yep.
I was just going to say simple joined up policies that are connected with real support, that doesn't require you to go a million miles round roads when you could have gone straight ahead.
Yeah, just to build on those, just I suppose maybe research and looking at needs analysis for the area, for particularly any of the social enterprises involved in climate action. Things change quickly, rapidly, and I think just some support around research and looking at what auxiliary needs and resources do social enterprises need in this sector.
Excellent. So let's make sure that we're getting that message over to the government. So we need to wrap it up there. If you could all please give a round of applause to our speakers.
Okay, we can start with the Climate Action Group. So I want to invite Chris Mooney-Brown on the Climate Action for Social Enterprise just to speak about a bit about what the group discussed.
Thanks, Momo.
Yes.
Okay, so very briefly, we looked at what social enterprises are currently doing. So they're training communities, delivering policy and advocacy around climate action. They're also driving innovation and change, which is going to be pushing Ireland's efforts, climate efforts. We also briefly touched on how social enterprises could move into the climate action space, how they can introduce sustainable practice and climate-friendly activities. A lot of this is around, and this isn't just unique to climate action, it's to any of their priorities. It's about identifying problems and being partly a problem solver, so you're having this problem-solving role, but also an enabling and empowering role so that you're allowing your communities to do that problem-solving as well, the problem identifying, problem-solving. So that's how social enterprises can move into that climate action. And more broadly, we were looking at how that empowering can take place. So for example, that can be specifically through tackling poverty by, for example, providing affordable products and services, tackling isolation by meeting community members where they're at. One of the benefits of that as well, we were talking about how if you're at a level, if you put yourself at a level with your communities, you'll speak their language. You'll sort of get their you'll get their confidence. You'll get buy-in from them, and you'll end up having a more coherent service or a product that is genuinely owned by your communities. We also touched on the challenges that social enterprises have had. We've heard so many of them today. A lot of it is, the biggest one is core funds and the capacity that is missing if you don't have that sufficient level of core funding. Interestingly, there was another point about premises, the difficulty of getting premises. And Jenny, one of the speakers, was saying even with the funding in place, it's still a challenge to get premises. So the role that government can play in that is addressing those. So I think that was pretty much a whistle-stop tour through our session. So I shall hand over now to Chris Corden.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that. Chris?
Was I bold?
You were bold. You're here now.
So ours was on social procurement, and we had a packed out house, and I think the trick to that is to put in less seats. Fergal, Grogan, Maury Keeley and Gavin Callan. Gavin from CBRE, Maura from Leave No Trace and Fergal from OGP, the Office of Government Procurement, spoke at the panel all about the rise of social procurement. We've done the sustainable piece, and of the sustainable piece, environment is more catered for than the social, and the social is just not seen as up there with environment for the past number of years, which is changing. And it's been changed from a very strange area. The private sector are pushing for this. So just as a brief story, Gavin was telling the story about there is a contract that's coming up from another organisation that's a private sector. They're looking for the tender, and they need to get social enterprises in that tender to meet the tender. So this is happening. People are mindful that there is money on the table. We got some feedback from Maura about the relationship is so important. Obviously, when a tender comes out, if you are doing procurement, it's only open for 2 to 3 weeks. The relationship was done a year in advance, so that if that happens, they're ready to rock and roll. They're almost crossing the T's and dotting the I's on week 1 of it coming out, rather than trying to build relationships. So it starts now if you want to think about what might happen in future. And also to commodify. So we need to have these areas where people who are private enterprises can purchase from social enterprises. What are you selling? Talk my language. How do I meet the criteria in the procurement? work with me so that I can help sell you and put you in the supply chain. Don't make it awkward for me, was a kind of like a, let's a rallying call for this. And on the other side, it's mindful for us to know that in social enterprise sector, we're doing all this social stuff and environmental stuff, but we're not necessarily commodifying it and selling it the way it needs to be sold for it to be heard, and how useful that is. Fergal then gave loads of different examples of ways that you might be able to improve your chances of getting a tender. Most tenders are in the €100,000. There's a lot of them are 50,000. Some of them have 1, 2, 3 bids. Some of them have 0 bids. So it's not as daunting as like there's a €4 million tender on that and we have to win it. You can go in with other organizations, and just a couple of other things, which is get feedback. And try and go in for it and do all these great things. There is help, support and guidance, and Fergal left his email, so good luck with that. But there is help, and we want to do better, and it's just up to us to be able to see if are we ready for that, what do we need to do to be ready for that as a social enterprise sector, and how can we make a difference. But yeah, brilliant. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Chris. And Garrett, on the leveraging social finance group, let's hear from you.
Could you have sat any further away, Garrett? No.
I don't know. I have Pac-Man in my head right now. Okay, so we had a session on social finance, and on the panel we had Barry Sims, who's the head of Community Finance Ireland in the ROI, Emmett O'Hara, the head of credit from Cloncredo, and Mario Votero, who is the impact director from Rethink Ireland. So we made it a pretty practical session. We talked about what is the difference between social finance and a typical banking loan that you will get from a normal bank, in inverted commas. So some of the things that were discussed, we touched on no security, typically no security, no personal guarantees, which is obviously really important for boards and trustees, that they're not personally guaranteeing a loan. The two types of loans that social finance typically gives, bridging loans and term loans of up to around 15 years, and then bridging loans which are used typically to bridge grant funding. So if an organisation is approved for a grant, the work has to be done obviously, as you all know, before the grant is drawn down. So a bridging loan will fund the work up front. We touched on the social finance ecosystem, the fact that it's been long established, that there's been hundreds of millions lent to organisations, to social enterprises and lots of community and voluntary organisations over the last 10 or 15 years. The one thing that came across was that in social finance, maybe it isn't just social finance, that it's in collaboration with other funding streams. In terms of preparation for somebody interested in social finance, the panel obviously are available to talk to people, but certainly some of the advice is make sure that the appropriate skills are on the board to manage that. Again, collaboration came up again. Treating the loan like a business, or the application like a business loan, is important, and certainly social finance is much more flexible than a typical business loan, but actually if you come into it with that approach, that's certainly helpful. And I think the point was made, two more points. One, in terms of the type of loans that social finance will do, I think the panel made the point that there certainly isn't, there probably isn't anything that they haven't seen before. So they're very much open and flexible for that perspective. And I think, I know I said 2 points, but I think that's it.
Thank you so much, Garrett. And thank you so much, Chris and Garrett, for facilitating those sessions for us. Now, I know that we have been having a long day. We're almost at the end of it, guys, and I know you don't want to leave. You want to stay here the whole day. I know we've had a long day of engaging and understanding more deeply the social enterprise sector as it relates to the policy and trading for impact, the conversations that we've had in terms of our panels, and also the breakout sessions that we have. I'd just like to let you know that even as well, the organizations that have their stands outside, they are available to support you. Go ask the people the question. They'll be there waiting outside as well after the day is done to talk and to network, to engage with, and they're there to support you. Also, if you see on your table as well, you should see on your chair too, if you want a 3-month membership to SERI, you should have to fill that form. I really recommend you do so. So many supports available by SERI for you to engage with the social enterprise sector and to ultimately grow your social enterprise and grow your impact. And now moving on to our final address for the day, I want to welcome Sue Adams, the founder and CEO of the award-winning social enterprise Educate for Sustainability. Sue has been a pioneer when it comes to climate action and climate education, and we're thrilled to have her share her closing remarks for the day. Welcome, Sue.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's always one of my favourite places to be, actually, is in a room full of social entrepreneurs and the social enterprise space. It's been something that's been really integral to my own journey, and definitely the success that we've had, particularly in the last couple of years, 1000% has been down to this space, to the people, to the connections, to the collaborations, and to the relationships. So it's a nice way for me to finish the day anyway. So just to tell you a little bit about who I am and what we do, I'm Sue Adams. I'm a social entrepreneur, and I'm the founder of Education for Sustainability, which I founded in 2017. So we provide climate education to schools, to teachers, to communities, and to businesses. But rolling it all kind of back to why I got into this space in the first place was because I actually really love nature. And that kind of stems from my own childhood, where I was grown up on my grandmother's farm in Donegal, and we were let off for hours. And then I progressed on to continue in my love of nature, and I worked in Dublin Zoo then as well. So I've been very immersed not only in my personal life, but also in my academic studies and where I've worked in the natural world. And it's something that's just really, really important to me. And needless to say, with the dread of reports around this time of year, particularly as we go through COP, we've had the recent report from WWF, where it says we've lost 73% of biodiversity worldwide. I'm just going to say that again. We've lost 73% of biodiversity worldwide. So in essence, if we count this room as 100%, I'm actually going to wipe all of you out. Gone. Gone forever. So with that, and with my passion and my mission to help people care about nature, I started Education for Sustainability. So I was very lucky. I got supported in 2017 by my local authority, and shout out to the local authorities. We work with 14 of them across Ireland. And they've always been really supportive for the work we do and our mission, which is to ensure that every young person in Ireland has the knowledge, the skills and the tools to live for sustainable development. And we want every child in Ireland to also be climate literate by 2030. So I spent the first couple of years, 2017, 2020, actually as a sole trader. So I always kind of tell people, like, I did my dissertation on elephants and not economics. So it's not, the business side isn't a natural thing for me. And if I'm being quite honest, I'd probably rather hang out with a load of elephants than a load of people, but that's just me. So I spent the first couple of years kind of in schools working. I wrote an 8-week course, and I was looking, seeing, watching what's going on. We've got a climate crisis. We are hearing about the reports. One of the most defining issues of our time actually is the climate crisis, and what are we going to do and how are we going to move forward? And this wasn't matching up with what I was seeing on the ground in schools, but it also wasn't matching up with what my children were learning either. And I couldn't fathom it, that on one hand we're sleepwalking into climate and nature catastrophe, and on the other hand there was a real lag in education. And as also someone who's such a believer in education, surely how are we going to get this hand to meet the other to actually solve these problems? Education has to be a real key and fundamental part of that. So COVID came, and that kind of allowed me to take all of my learnings in the space in the couple of years and the gaps I had identified, which were things like it takes 10 years for curriculum reform, books are static, so the science is changing all of the time, books simply can't catch up, but also teachers are really time poor, funding is an issue, substitution is an issue, training is an issue, and trying to get onto an already really packed curriculum. So during COVID, I took all of that and I boxed a course that is really easy to use, really tangible, and actually bridged all of those gaps that I had learned about for the first few years. Then, as COVID began to move through to the other side, just found out actually in 2021 what a social enterprise was. I'd never heard of it before. And it was actually Social Entrepreneurs Ireland's Ideas Academy. And I said, yeah, they kind of seem like my people. I'd like to move into that space. So that was really the last, since 2021 to now, within this space is really where the social enterprise has taken off and mobilised massively. So I've been really lucky to have had the support from Social Enterprise Ireland through Social Enterprise Ireland through 3 awards, Rethink Ireland 3 awards as well. And then, as I said, we've been supported through our local authorities. But in particular with SEI and Rethink, it really gave me the backing and the grounding to grow a business, and the understanding and the supports and the skills and the knowledge and all of those things I simply just, I didn't have. And if I'm honest about it as well, as much as I'd like to spend some time with elephants, the business side, I'd rather be out doing the work than really kind of doing the bolstering, the governance and the business and all that kind of stuff. But needless to say, it has to be done if we're going to create and excel within this space. So those 2 organisations in particular, have been phenomenal and really helped boost the success of the programme and what we've done. And some of our impact is, so we've worked actually with over 41,000 students. We're in over 500 schools. We've worked with 1,500 teachers. I've 19 facilitators. I've 5 staff. Won Best Social Enterprise of the Year in 2024. And that's not even mentioning the environmental impacts, like things like, the planting of 4,000 trees, the 44 plastic-free schools, and the list kind of goes on. It's been a really amazing journey so far. I mean, the lows have been things like access to funding. We fall in a bit of a grey area because we work with schools, so we're not recognised by the Department of Education because we're informal education, but also in areas like, for example, the circular economy grant that just came out there. Schools aren't included as well. Sometimes we're excluded then if we're a social enterprise versus a charity, and we're in a kind of grey space. But they're the lows. But the highs, as well as the impacts then, and the roller coaster of that has been actually the people and the students that we've been working for and with. It's just magic to be in a room, and it happens time and time again when, a teacher goes, God, that student hasn't spoken all year, and they never get involved in anything. And you see that student actually running an action project and making a really big difference, not only within their school, but in their community as well. So I suppose my hopes for the future in the social enterprise space really are, that we all get to continue doing the really great and really important work that we're all doing, and that there's funding to support us. Somebody mentioned core funding earlier today. That's really important. We can't actually survive without it. All of the funds kind of want to fund projects as opposed to core funding. So that would be my hope, and a personal hope would mine, I'd love to actually get a seat at the table within the education space as well. There's a new climate action subject coming out in 2025, which is great news. And given the impact that we've had in schools, 500 schools, as a practitioner, I suppose we have a lot to offer, but sometimes within the education space with where we sit, we don't necessarily hold the credentials to have that seat at the table. they're missing a trick, in my opinion, if they're not including the practitioners who are actually doing the really good work on the ground and who are really making a difference. So for the funders, I encourage you to invest in not just ideas, but actually in people, and to invest in the movements and the people who are driving those movements as well. Funding can amplify our impact. It can make a really big difference to what we're doing. And then I suppose to the social entrepreneurs in the room, you know, keep going, keep being brave, keep doing what you're doing. In those hard days, it's one of the most amazing spaces to be, that you can actually pick up the phone or go on Zoom to a complete stranger and, you know what, and say, this is really hard, and you have an ear and you have support. And that's what I absolutely love about this space, and I think it's really, really special. So I think we'd all like to leave the room today then as collaborators and champions and as change makers, and committing to continue to make real change in our communities. And I'd like to thank Siri today for a really inspiring and insightful day. And thank you to everyone for being here and for being part of the social enterprise movement.
Well, thank you so much, Sue, for that inspiring closing remarks. And thank you to everyone here that has really engaged with us, everyone in person and online as well, that has been with us throughout this whole event today. This event has been such an inspiring day of hearing the stories of different social enterprises, learning about what's coming up, particularly as it relates to the policy incentives out there, and lastly, learning about with our colleagues and networking with our colleagues also. I really want to thank you again, and thank all the people that participated in creating this program and this conference today. I want to thank Sari, particularly John Logue, who I heard from the grapevine is getting married on Saturday. So I'll put you out there on the spot. But thank you so much again for being a part of this conference. Again, if you are sharing it out there on the social medias, on the social everythings, I was about to say social enterprise, but on the social media, you can do so by hashtagging SoCentIRL. This event, again, is hosted by the Department of Rural and Community Development. And again, my name is Mamobo Ogoro, social psychologist, founder and CEO of GURM. And I really hope that you take all of the message, the good vibes, the energy, and also the learnings that you take today back into your respective worlds, into your respective social enterprises, your organizations, because at the end of the day, we are all doing the great work to really make Ireland a better place. Thank you so much, and safe travels.